All right. So what is up? I'm glad we're finally getting together. If so, I will say I'm a little nervous to talk about some of these things just because I haven't done it in a public forum before. So I don't think we'll have any problems because you seem, even though I think your ideas are a little out there, you seem like a pretty respectable dude. So I think we should be okay. But I don't know. In case anything goes crazy wrong, I might shut this down early. But I don't think I will. I think we'll be fine.
All right.
So yeah, I don't really know how to get this started. Let me update my stuff on here so we can. So is there in of any of the topics that we were talking about at first? Is there any that you wanted to just dive straight into, or that you wanted to talk about first?
Um, we should probably start with feminism issues like abortion or voting rights.
Yeah, I guess that's whichever one you want to specifically focus on, because, like I said, feminism as a whole. First of all, I guess I'm not really a feminist, so I can't really defend feminism, but I do agree with a lot of things that feminists tend to believe, like just general gender equality. I'm pro-choice, sexual revolution. I have no problems with. I mean, is there any particular one you want to talk about first? I think you said you don't like sexual liberation, right? That's kind of interesting. That's a good that one. That one isn't very controversial to start off with.
Yes, that's true.
So what's your problem with the idea of the sexual liberation?
Yeah, so the sexual liberation basically means that anyone can have as many partners before a marriage as they want, and basically the standard of
Let me know if I need to turn this up or
monogamy
anything
doesn't
too,
exist
if it's too
anymore.
soft.
So you can have multiple partners at the same time. You can date as much as you want and without consequences, basically.
Yeah. So just so along. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Or sorry, were you done, or you want to keep?
Yeah, so now let me explain why that is bad. So there is a bonding hormone which is called oxytocin, and every time you kiss someone or if you're in a relationship, you basically get that oxytocin hormone from your brain, and it makes you happy. It makes you able to bond.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of statistics that prove the more partners a man or woman has, the less able they are to basically form a good and lasting relationship. And
Wait, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? Just the more relationship somebody has, the harder it is to develop new ones.
yes, that's true, because your brain releases less oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone.
So you consider? So when you say a relationship, do you just mean just any sort of like sexual encounter, or do you mean like an actual like bonded relationship with someone, or do you kind of mean all of the above?
I mean long-term sexual relationships, like marriages, for example.
Okay. So it doesn't really seem that the idea of, I don't know, I guess if we're talking about long-term relationships, then the idea of the sexual liberation of people to just be able to bang whoever they want, I don't really know how that inhibits that.
Yeah, so the problem is that the divorce rate increases with each partner someone has before they marry. And the reason why that is bad is because it creates a bad environment for children. The best environment for a child to grow up is a functional family where the father is there.
I would
Because
say both
children who
parents,
grow
but
up,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
yeah, both parents. So
Yeah.
children who grow up without a father are basically they're damaged. They are more likely to take drugs, be criminal, engage in dangerous behavior, and so on.
Yeah, but sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but like, and basically, I'm kind of just to kind of cut us off here for a second too. I'm kind of coming at this from the destiny point of view, where if there's anything I say that you disagree with, feel free to cut me off right there, and I will kind of do the same to you. I'll try to be respectful though. It's just if there's something that you hear that there's a lot of people that just try to throw out a bunch of statistics, and instead of being able to counter those or talk about those one by one, they just want to throw out as many statistics as they can. And I just want to prevent that from either side. Shit, there's somebody at the door. I got to get real fast. I'll be right back. All right, you still there? Sorry about that.
Yes, I'm still here.
All right, sorry, there's somebody at my door. I totally. So we were talking about. Sorry, I totally got us sidetracked. We're talking about relationships. You were saying that there's an increased divorce rate, right? Like after every marriage, that you're more likely to get divorced in your next one.
Yes.
But I mean, wouldn't that? So from what I understand, I could be totally wrong about this, but from what I understand, people that are in their first, because people say like the divorce rate in America is 50% or something like that, but I think that's because the people that are in multiple marriages, like you said, like that, really skew the numbers to make it seem like it's not like 50% of all marriages end in divorce. It's like 80% of people's second and third marriages end in divorce or something like that, which really skews the numbers. So, I mean, I guess you're not wrong there, but like, I want to make sure that all these statistics are put in the right context.
Yeah, it's about right. For the first marriage, it's like 40 or 50%, and the second and third one are like 60 and 70.
But are we? I know this is like a very Americo-centric thing to say, or Americentric, whatever you want to say, but I'm always kind of coming from the basic premise that like we're talking about America. If we're talking about different locations than that, can you just let me know to begin with?
Yeah, I'm talking about America here.
All right, cool. I figured. I actually want to check American divorce rate for first marriage. I'm actually really curious to see this because you hear 50%, but I'm pretty sure first marriages, the divorce rate is actually much lower than 50%. But I could be wrong. False conclusion in the 70s that half of first marriages end in divorce was based on a simple but completely wrong analysis of the marriage and divorce rates per 1,000 people in the United States. A similar abuse of statistical analysis led to the conclusion that 60% of all second marriages end in divorce. I mean, this is a whole article that I can't really read right now, but I'm trying to actually find the real numbers. For college-educated women who marry after the age of 25 and have established an independent source of income, the divorce rate is only 20%. Which I guess makes sense.
College-educated women.
Yeah. Are you for educating women in college?
Well, I assume that the divorce rate is so low because they found a husband that makes good money in the college.
Yeah. Well, it's because it seems as though when women are given opportunities to control who they're in relationships with, to control their education, to control their income, and basically to control their bodies, that they're put in better situations, and it tends to make a better outcome for everyone involved, including spouses, including communities, people all around them. And having the freedom, this is kind of starting to leak into the abortion argument, but having the freedom to make all these decisions and to make these mistakes when they're younger, to be quote-unquote sexually liberated, I feel like is probably a good thing. More freedom is probably better.
No, I doubt that.
But like, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to like push this. So what would your solution be then? Is this like a state mandated thing to where the state can enforce sexual partners, or is this like a social thing where you think society needs to go back to like shaming people for being promiscuous, or what's your solution?
So the first thing I would illegalize is basically divorce without a reason. About 40% of American white women are single mothers and 70% of black women are single mothers, and I think that letting a child grow up without a father is the most damaging thing that can happen to someone. So I would first illegalize divorce without a reason.
But you know, most of these kids that are being like raised by single mothers, their mothers weren't married in the first place, so it's not like they had anybody to get divorced from when they had their kid.
Well, yeah, but marriage should be mandatory to be able to have children.
But I just don't see how you're gonna like actually enforce any of this. Like, how are you going to enforce people not having kids outside of wedlock? I'm pretty sure that's been happening since the beginning of time.
They just don't get welfare. They don't get any welfare if they're a single mother. Problem solved immediately.
I mean, but
it's not cruel. It's not cruel, dude.
No, I don't think it's cruel. I never said it's cruel. I just don't think it's effective.
Letting your son or your daughter grow up without a father is very cruel. It's extremely damaging, and I don't think it's a bad thing to take away welfare for single mothers because it encourages them to raise their kids in a functional family.
But I don't think that that's how people think. I don't think that like a 16-year-old girl in high school is thinking, oh, well, in my future I may not get money from the government, therefore it's probably best for me to find a stable relationship before I think she's thinking, my boyfriend broke up with me and I don't want him to, or oh no, I had sex and the condom slipped and I'm scared. I don't really feel like this like decision-making process is how life works.
Okay.
I guess I really like, I'm not even looking at the ethical side of it right now. I'm only purely looking at like the utilitarian side and seeing like, how do you actually like, how does this work if this was going to happen?
In my ideal state, every child would have a right to their fathers, or both parents, of course. So divorcing, if you have a child, is illegal. A man who has a child has to provide financially, and a woman has to take care with the father in a family together, because that is the best thing for the child.
But so conversely, is it the best thing for a child if the father is an alcoholic who beats his mom and beats the kid, and who, let's say the mom is working all day and the dad takes all the money they make and spends it on a bunch of shit? Like, you're right, like statistically it is better for a family to be full father, mother, child. Like, yes, you are. I'm not going to argue that. That's a dumb position to argue. It just seems that you're taking all nuance and subtlety out of it and not taking the individual into account and only taking like the collective, which is a very, very Marxian thing of you to do. No, I'm just kidding. But
So, first of all, the amount of divorces happening because of domestic violence is very low.
But it happens.
Especially in white community. It happens rarely, but it's either solved by the government, who just says you stop hitting your children, or you go to jail, or it's just yeah. So what I'm saying is, usually, generally, people should only have children in families where the child grows up with both parents.
So sorry, please keep going. Hello?
Hello, you go on.
Oh, okay. No, well, I guess I kind of I agree with what you're saying too, in that like children are much better off coming from a family where there's a stable family, a father and a mother, and a stable income. So why aren't you pro-choice then?
Oh, pro-choice. Yeah, that's...
I don't mean to jump forward. Like, I know that we're jumping way past the sexual liberation. We're going straight into that.
Yes. So, let's say you want a just and fair society, where both genders have the same responsibilities and same rights.
All right.
Yeah, so the logical conclusion, if the woman has a right to abortion, would be that, so the woman doesn't have to take responsibility, basically, if she aborts, right? The logical conclusion would be that the man also has a right to financially abort. So the man also doesn't have to become a father if he doesn't want to.
This is kind of an interesting... Okay, so I will say I disagree with saying that the woman doesn't take responsibility. I feel like going through...
No. I said she doesn't have to take responsibility.
But I feel like when you say she doesn't have to take responsibility, do you mean like by getting an abortion she's not taking responsibility?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I feel like... Okay, I guess I'm just coming from it from a different perspective. Like, the way I see it is... that is her taking responsibility of her life and trying to put her and her potential future children in the best place possible. I mean, if you look at families that stay together longer, that have higher happiness index, whose children end up having better outcomes, they typically come from places that have higher access to abortion and higher access to contraceptives, so that these women can make the decision not to have children when they're 16, even if they get pregnant, so that they can put themselves and put their potential future children in the best place possible, so that they can let's say they want to find a stable let's say a person wants to find a stable partner with a good job who has no kids as well. That will be easier if they don't have a kid themselves, if they haven't been investing all of their time and money into a kid, instead of investing all of that time and money into themselves, into their education, which means that we have a better educated populace. Children that come from, like you said, from a family with a mother and father have a lower chance of committing crimes, have lower crime rates. And so if you allow this mom to only have children whenever she wants to, whenever she's ready, it seems like all the data shows that reduces crime rates, it increases happiness indexes, lowers divorce rates. I mean, effectively, it does everything that I feel like you're trying to do. I just think that maybe there's an ethical hurdle over the quote-unquote killing of a child or whatnot.
So for this discussion, let's just assume that it's not morally wrong. All right.
Yeah.
That's a long, heavy debate. So the woman,
Which is a more feels over reals debate too.
yes. So those women who abort are usually the ones who failed to use birth control or condoms, right?
Yeah.
There is a heavy correlation between having an abortion and being promiscuous, because you failed to use contraceptives because you have so much sex. And I doubt that women who get a chance to abort are more likely to have long-lasting happy relationships. They are less likely because they are more promiscuous, they failed to use contraceptives, and that shows that they don't think about the consequences of their action as much.
I mean, maybe. I feel like you're making a lot of assumptions, though. Like
What's an assumption?
you're assuming that they're not being safe about it, and that even if they weren't being safe about it, I still don't think that necessarily means that a woman needs to give up the right to her own body for 9 months. Like, I don't know. I don't know what the
All right.
like. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So, I already said, if the woman has the right to not be responsible for her children, if she doesn't have to take responsibility, the logical conclusion would be that the man also has a right to not take responsibility, which means he doesn't have to pay child support, he doesn't have to be a father, he doesn't have to see the child. Let's say you give society the choice: do both genders have the right to abort and not take responsibility, or do both genders have the right to don't have the right to abort? Society, or especially women in general, who are the majority of voters, wouldn't give men the right to abort. They would most likely give up their own right to abortion, so men also lose theirs. Having to take care of a child without resources or welfare is much worse than having to have the child and then give it away for adoption or something.
I guess I just. Oh, I didn't see it.
Abortion for women only really want abortion if men don't have the right to abortion. They want to be able to force men to take responsibility while at the same time not having to take responsibility. That's basically.
So when it comes to abortion, I actually find one of the more interesting topics of this, because I feel like everything else has been played out. I think this idea of, does a man have the right to quote unquote abort, I find that more interesting than anything else, and that's something that I've never really thought that much of, I guess.
Well, men should have the right? It's logical. It's just the fair thing to do. If women have the right to not become mothers, men should have the right to not have to be fathers, right? It's logical.
I mean, I feel like that's kind of a simplistic way to look at it, though, I guess, because there's more at stake for the mother. There's more involved in the mother. The mother is putting more, she's dedicating more to an actual pregnancy and to having a kid than the father necessarily would,
Not
simply
really.
by biology. Yeah, dude.
The amount of money a man has to pay 18 years. Look, dude, 18 years of child support.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than $100,000. The woman has to carry out a child for 9 months. You can't compare that.
I feel like you can, and I'm not saying, when I say that you can compare it, I'm also whenever I'm saying these things, I'm not saying that it's automatically the woman as the short end of the stick either. Like, I'm not trying to insinuate that she's always good and the guy's always bad and the guy just needs to suck it up. All I'm saying is that, man, this is something I don't really have a strong opinion on this either way right now. I mean, the way I look at it, I generally, because one of the biggest reasons that I am pro-choice is that I'm not sure what it's like in Germany, but in the United States we are very, very, very we really hold this idea of bodily autonomy very sacredly, to the point where, like, let's say we're both in a car together, right? And let's say we crash and I die and you're losing blood really fast, but let's say, according to my religion or according to just the way I thought, I wanted my body to stay totally intact. And even though my blood is like fully compatible with yours and they could take it out, the way that we view bodily autonomy is that nobody can take anything that's a part of that person's body without their permission, regardless of situation. So,
Nice.
so whenever a woman is pregnant, if she doesn't want that pregnancy, that's 9 months. That's the hormones, the hormones that pump through a woman's body can change her permanently. She has to go 9 months of giving up her bodily autonomy, of carrying something that she doesn't want there, of waking up every single day having another living creature in her. Well, eventually a living creature. And that's just something that the guy will never have to actually deal with. And I would be, when it comes to completely aborting for like a man, like completely taking away all responsibility, I don't know. That just seems like on the whole, it's probably a bad idea, because a lot of these, at the end of the day, if the baby is born, they were a part of the situation and the women normally need some help. Maybe there's a way to kind of like find it in between. Like maybe guys can completely, and this is just me spitballing, but maybe a man can completely revoke any of their rights to ever see the kid, to ever have any legal rights to like making decisions about the kid or whatnot, and maybe there's some sort of like reduced child support or something there that can be done. But to just completely say that men can just wash their hands of it, I don't know if that's good.
So first of all, there are the scenarios. Either both genders have the right to abort, or none of them. If the man has the right to abortion, the woman can abort too.
But I mean,
she doesn't have to take responsibility. So next argument.
Well, no. Let's not pass that yet. Sorry, keep that in mind. Whatever you're going to say next, please keep that in mind. But men do have the right to abortion too. They don't have the right.
No.
Yeah, if a man and a woman get pregnant and they
are forced by gunpoint to pay child support for 18 years. If men don't pay child support, they go to jail. Like it's the only part of debt prison that is still remains in modern society. A man has to go to jail if he can't pay child support.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that men have the right to abortion in the same way that women do. If a man and a woman get pregnant and they want to have a baby, or if they want to have an abortion, then the man also has the right to agree and say that yes, we should have an abortion, is all I was trying to say.
Should have, or do they have right now?
No, what I'm saying is that if a man and a woman, basically what I'm trying to say is that if, assuming the woman wants an abortion, a man also has the right to an abortion. A man is also allowed to say, yes, let's abort this child.
They should have. Right now, men don't have the right to abortion, but they should have, is what you're saying.
This is like a semantics thing, I think. I'm saying that whatever rights that women have to like the actual, I'm basically saying that abortion is legal, is all I'm saying. That's kind of what I'm...
For both genders. Both genders, we're saying. Nobody can force anyone else to do something with their body they don't want. So women can force a man to work and pay child support. That would be a logical conclusion.
So, again, this is something that I haven't read up enough on and that I'm not educated enough on. But it just seems to me that child support is there... Child support is there for a reason, and it's not because we're not punishing a man for his indiscretion. What we're trying to do is set the child up to put the child in the best situation they can possibly be in.
Yeah,
because
in a family.
But we're also, when we're talking about abortion for women, we're not talking about a child. We're talking about a fetus that hasn't even been born yet. Once we start talking about child support, we're talking about a living, breathing child who has been born, is alive. There's no feels over reals argument about is this a child, is this a living person or not. That is like a real person who needs...
That's why men and women need to say to the government during the pregnancy that they want to abort. A man can't abort after the fetus is born. The man has to go to the woman, tell her, I want to financially abort, and then the woman can choose if she wants to have the child or not. A woman never has to carry out the child without knowing that the man financially aborted the child.
It just seems like that's the worst case.
No, but it's justice. I get that they would be starving to death maybe if they didn't get welfare from the government, but that would be justice, right? Men have the same rights as women. Nobody can force anyone else to do something with their body or work if they don't want.
If we want to talk about child child support reform and the way that we look at how we treat fathers in our society, I would be much more willing to talk about that than to just say that guys should have the ability to wipe the slate clean. Because even when you're talking about making the decision before the child's born, when it comes to financially supporting, it's still making a decision about a person who will be born, rather than like if a woman wants to have an abortion because she wants to keep her right to bodily autonomy. Like regardless of, because I get what you're saying in that he doesn't have the bodily autonomy because he has to use it to work, to pay money, blah blah blah. But that's not necessarily true, because at this point, it's like, it's the same as if he had a kid that he did want, he would still be using that money to support the kid and try to put the kid in the best situation that he can be in.
Alright, so if you look up who initiates divorces,
it's women mainly.
You know that 80% of divorces are by women,
yeah.
Basically. So we can basically assume that most relationships are also ended by women, right? Most
probably.
Relationships.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So let's say the man makes the decision to leave the woman. The
Yeah.
man initiates the divorce. The man says, I want to go away, just run away. In that case, I would say yes, to pay child support. But why can a woman cheat, initiate divorce, and then force the man to pay child support, even though he wanted to be a father?
So, okay, so this is
just?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and this is all coming down to, this has more to do with, okay, so the reason that we have things like alimony and child support in America are because historically, and things are starting to change, but historically, men have been the primary breadwinners, and women have stayed at home to take care of the kids. And because women had to stay home to take care of the kids and to take care of the house, they weren't able to move a career forward in the way that a man would. Therefore, let's say a couple gets divorced at age 40 when they have kids that are 10 to 15, a woman can't just go out in the workforce and make the same amount of money that a woman of her age that didn't have kids would be making, where the guy has been building his career the whole time, making as much money as he possibly can. This woman is now out on her ass with 20 years of not working at all, so she has to start from the bottom. So the whole point of like child support and alimony in this case is to help her get on her feet until she's eventually self-sustaining, and to the point where she can take care of herself. I don't really know how long alimony payments go for. I think that goes marriage to marriage.
18 years.
18 years. Alimony's 18 years or child support?
Until the child is basically 18 and also an adult.
Yeah, for sure. Brennan, I don't know how to say that, but thank you for following. Appreciate it, man. Sorry, I got to call out. Got to do the whole Twitch thing. You know how it goes. But to me, that's... I'm kind of getting... I kind of got lost here for a second. But so that's why we do all that. That's a little bit different than... So, okay, I'm sorry, I forgot.
So child support laws are there because the children would otherwise starve to death, or they wouldn't get enough resources to survive. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, but I guess when we were talking about how women initiate, I think you said 80% of divorces are...
Yeah, yes.
Which, like, from what I understand, I don't know if the 80% number is correct, but let's just take it at face value and say it's correct. The problem that I have with people that say views like yours is that we see numbers, especially if we're going to start talking about the race realism stuff and the IQ or whatnot, we see numbers like 80% of women initiate divorces or breakups, and we immediately just assume bad things about the woman, or we assume bad things about the person.
Yes, of course, if you're a woman and you destroy a family and take away your father's child, you're a bad person. Yeah.
But we don't know that though. Like, what if the woman and the child were put in a terrible situation, and this dad was just a piece of shit, and they needed to get out of there in order to have a better life for themselves?
Well, domestic violence cases are low.
But
it's not 80%.
They still happen.
In the majority of cases, it's the woman who breaks up, not because of domestic violence, but because she wants a better man or just is bored or something.
But
it's not always.
See, this is the problem that I have with this analysis, is that you immediately say that they initiate the divorce because either they want a new man or because they're bored or blah, blah, blah. That happens, sure. And number one, that's not necessarily an illegitimate reason to get a divorce. It's not necessarily a good reason to get a divorce, but it's not necessarily an illegitimate one either. But at the same time, we're only... Ooh! I don't know if you heard that, but it just... lightning's really loud. Thundered. Lightning is the light.
Yes.
Ooh! It's like raining. It's raining super hard. So, sorry, just to finish this real fast. It seems like you're always assuming the worst about the women, and you're not trying to take the big picture into account and say, okay, well, why is this happening? Why are 80% of divorces initiated by women? Is it maybe that the society that we're in relegates women to a position where they're not necessarily happy in the home, therefore they think they need to move out, and if they feel trapped, and then they feel like they need to make a big change in their life?
Show you.
Please do.
So in the stream with paper planes, did you see that graph at the end?
I was it the one that he kicked you off for?
He kicked me because of my name, but not.
But it was that part, right?
Yeah, you saw that graph, right?
I don't remember the graph. No, I did see it, but I don't remember it.
Should I send you the graph?
Yeah, you can send. I'm not gonna get mad about your name or whatever.
All right.
I think it's dumb and edgelordy, but I'm not gonna get mad about it. Jeffosaurus, sorry. Child support doesn't go to mothers of children, the government gets it. I don't know if that's necessarily true. I know that my mom gets child support, and it goes to her. But then again, my parents had a very, very amicable separation. When you sign up for welfare, you're required to sign your rights to collect over to the state. That kind of makes sense a little bit, right? Like, if the state's going to help support you and, like, provide for you, then maybe you might not be allowed to do some things that other people are. My grandma paid tens of thousands on behalf of my dad, and the government didn't give any to my mom. I'm sorry, I'm just having a hard time following there. Child support back pay doesn't go away until the kids turn 28 or 31 in my state unless you pay it off. So is that money that's owed by the father, or money that is that like extra money that the mother necessarily would have to return? Yes. All right. Cool. That makes sense. I don't know too much about it because I'm not part of that age group. I've never had to go through it. I don't have kids or anything, and the only interaction that I do have, it like family-wise, was pretty amicable, and like it went very easily. So like there was no troubles there, like there are for a lot of couples. Am I missing the link somewhere, Armin? Or
No, I just have to go to a lot of pictures.
oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. So let's just say, I think a lot of the problems that I have with a lot of these viewpoints is that generally, like, I just feel like it's a misinterpretation of the statistics. I feel like a lot of these come from a place, and I'm trying not to make any assumptions about you because I don't know you. I don't know what your assumptions are, but from at least what I've seen from a lot of people that seem to espouse the same ideas that I'm seeing here, it really looks like there's a preconceived notion of people or individuals, and that these people go around trying to find a lot of statistics that match up to their preconceived notions, and then try to make arguments about that too. And it's the same with the super lefty SJW mega feminist types, right? Like, I bet I could get you to agree with that they see perceived injustices, they try to cherry pick statistics to make these injustices seem like way worse than they are, and then they throw it out there without taking a nuanced, bird's eye view analysis of the situation.
Well, the interpretation part of the statistics, there is only so much you can interpret statistics. If you give a logical reason, that's obviously clear. Like, if you say that 80% of divorces are initiated by women, you could assume that somehow the divorce courts benefit women.
I mean, I don't want to assume anything, especially in situations like this. I want to... Nice shirt. Thank you, Dragon Slayer Leet. I don't want to make assumptions at all, I guess, is where I'm coming from. Like, I want to see if there is kind of a phenomena like 80% of divorces are initiated by the women. I don't immediately want to say there's something wrong with women. What I want to say is, why is this happening? Let's look at the details. Like you mentioned before, like that African American or Black IQ is on average lower than white IQ. Well, I can tell you in America there are very, very good reasons for that to have absolutely nothing to do with genetics. And it seems like a lot of people that say things like that, they immediately want to make it seem like wink, wink, nudge, nudge, white people are better. And I'm like, no, white people aren't better. They just, on average in America, have a lot better opportunities than black people do, so they're put in a lot better situation. And that's kind of what I feel is probably happening here with this whole women thing. Is it's like,
so you would say that all races in general have the same IQ?
Well, no, I wouldn't, but let's not skip forward to that yet. We'll get to that eventually.
So do you see the graph right now?
Is it in Discord? Let me check. Yeah.
Yes, so we were wondering why so many divorces or basically breakups with children are initiated by women. and that graph basically explains it. Do you see it?
Yeah, I have it on the stream right now. If we stack on welfare benefits,
Yes.
you can quickly see what happens. Welfare crops up in several spots. Childcare, energy, housing, food, cash. Single mom is better off earning. Are these annotations, like the stuff in red and black where it says highest welfare cliff and the single mom is better off, are those from the Pennsylvania Department of Public Welfare, or were those added on afterwards?
No, that was from me basically.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure. That I'm very clear about what's actually from the department and what's not.
So all those every color except the blue graph, right, is basically welfare, and it basically, until the man makes more than 45,000, the government basically rewards the woman with multiple thousands of dollars every month, because the government gives the woman more child support than the man earns. At basically 60,000, there is no reason for a woman to divorce, because the government gives her the same amount of money as the man does. And at 30,000, until 30,000, the reward for divorcing is basically huge, because the woman gets about $30,000 per month more in child support than the man earns. That's the reason why, especially among black women, the divorce rate is so high, because the government basically gives the woman more money than the man earns.
So, okay, I'm trying to get on the same page with you. Does this graph basically say that poor people get divorced more?
Poor women get divorced more, yes.
Okay, that kind of makes sense. People that are in
with our system, like
people that are in bad situations tend to break up because they don't have the same access to things that'll help out their relationship that people in better situations have.
Yes. That's my problem with the current system. If a man basically makes less than 45,000, the government rewards the woman for destroying a family and taking away the father, and that is the problem I have with our current system right now. Without the sexual liberation, there wouldn't be a third party like the government destroying relationships and taking away fathers from children.
I guess
just like
I just don't. That seems like a very uncharitable view of how all this works. Like, I don't think, especially people that are lower class like this, I don't think. To me, this is kind of like when people say, like, we need the death penalty because it prevents crime. Like, when somebody murders somebody, they don't think, oh, well, if I do this, then I'll get the death penalty, therefore I shouldn't commit this crime.
Let me explain to you why death penalty is terrible.
Oh, no, I'm not pro-death penalty. I'm arguing against the death penalty. I'm saying it's dumb to think that.
I can explain logically if you want. So, let's say you have a crime like rape or child abuse, pedophilia, and basically you establish death penalty for those crimes, right? What would happen is basically that all child abusers, pedophiles, and rapists would kill their victims and not let them go to the police and make a case.
It's kind of like the Chinese thing. I've heard stories in China that if you hit somebody with a car,
I know what you
you want to run them over.
They would stop helping. Yes. So what you basically encourage people to kill their victims or somehow not let those victims go to the police and make a case. That's why death penalty is so bad. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It encourages more criminality.
Yeah, well, you're probably, I don't know if you're right or wrong there. I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. The problem that I have with the death penalty, and I brought up, we're kind of going all over the place now. I brought up the death penalty in order to kind of be an analogy to what we were saying here. And the analogy I was basically trying to make is like, a criminal doesn't take their potential punishment necessarily into account. They don't think, oh, well, if I do this way, then I'll only get manslaughter. But if I do this way, then I'll get life in prison. So blah, blah, blah. They don't take that stuff into account. It seems here like I have a hard time believing that a woman who is in a marriage where the household net income is $35,000 or something like that, I have a hard time believing that she's like, well, I will have more money if I divorce my husband, so I am going to divorce my husband for more money. It might...
In the black community, it's really well known that you get more money from the government than from husbands. That's why 70% of black women are single and don't have a father. Like, do you have another explanation why there are so many single black women?
I feel like there's
coincidence.
No, I feel like it's probably way more complicated than the government will give you money. I feel like if we probably take the entire history of what black people have had to deal with in America since 1830, since like the 1820s, the fact that they didn't have that, in a lot of ways they still don't have equal rights, not codified in the law.
Have to do with divorce rate.
Because
Why
if you're in a much shittier situation than other people, you're not going to have the same access to help that these other people have. Therefore, an issue that might be a small issue to somebody who has like a lot of money, or somebody that has access to like therapists or things like that could work it out, that could potentially be a relationship ender for people in bad neighborhood. And just from the beginning, like, if you don't have a good education, if you don't have a quality education like other people did, then you're not going to be educated enough to make these better decisions. You're not going to have the same... If you haven't even been taught basic epistemology, how to formulate a good like thought process to do reasoning, then you're going to have a harder time making better... Like, there's a reason people that are poor take payday loans, because they don't know that payday loans are predatory and the worst thing they could possibly do. It's not just because they're dumb, it's because they're ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean in a bad way. I mean, they literally have not been given the opportunity to be educated about a lot of these things. I just feel like it comes... I feel like you're attributing a lot of this to malice and to like some sort of sneaky like hand rubbing, like, hee, we're going to do it. And I just think it's people aren't afforded the same opportunities and aren't as educated as other people, and therefore probably make bad decisions.
So I agree that black people kinda have it worse off because of education and these ghettos and lower standards of living and so on. But what I'm saying is that is the reason why
don't crack me up. Try to have a
less.
conversation.
And if you have less money than the average, you profit from welfare more than others. Rich people don't profit from welfare. Poor people do. And because there are disproportionately lots of poor people among black communities, because of racism, whatever, the divorce rate is so high because they want welfare. Because poor people profit from welfare more than rich people do.
But are these children that are responsible, like, because this all started off when we were talking about abortion and stuff, are a lot of these kids that are being raised by single mothers or in fatherless homes, are they coming from families that were married and then divorced? I feel like it's far more likely that the parents were never married in the first place, and there was never any divorce that happened. So we would just be talking purely about welfare, or not welfare, childcare.
So from what I know, black people don't marry often, because they just are very promiscuous and have sex, and then there's a child. And child support. You
can't just say that all people of a certain race are like unifying.
But most people, generally, black people are more promiscuous.
I don't know. Most white people like mayonnaise. Like, I don't know.
Right. Have you ever looked at a graph that showed how much percent of abortions are made by black women or by blacks? As in, what percentage of black women have abortions, or what percentage of all abortions are by black women? So there is a graph, and that graph shows what race abortions are made. So there are white women who make abortions, black women who make abortions, Hispanics, Asians, and so on. Yeah. And that graph basically shows that black women, even though they're only like 7% of the population, they're like 40 or 50% of all abortions. They're like 4 or 5 times more likely to abort. Yeah. Man, it sounds like we really need to start investing more money into sexual education, into better access to contraceptives. Sounds like we could be doing a lot more for these communities to help them out. You don't need sexual education if you just make divorce without a reason illegal and create families. But these kids are being born outside of marriage in the first place. Rewarding a woman for divorcing her husband with welfare isn't the conclusion. It's not the answer. But if the end goal is to reduce abortion, then having marriage, saying people can't get divorced will do nothing. Because most of these kids, I would assume that most of these kids that are being born outside of wedlock, and a lot of these women that are having abortions are probably having abortions because they're not married in the first place. Have a child outside of wedlock. But how do you enforce that though? Like, there's no way to. You can't stop people from having sex. You stop getting welfare. That's it. Like, that's not making anything. They're still going to have kids outside of wedlock. Yeah, but they won't get any welfare. But then we have a lot more kids. Like, you're saying that. Then these kids. Okay, so what you're saying is that. Okay, I don't even know where to begin on this. All right. So you're saying that you want to reduce the kids that are born outside of wedlock. So we're going to make getting no contest divorce illegal, even though most of the kids that have single mothers aren't being born in marriages. So we're going to make it illegal for women to have babies outside of wedlock by taking away their welfare, which just means that these kids are going to be in an even worse situation. So what it seems like to me is going to happen is the rate of children being born outside of wedlock is going to stay consistent because people they're not thinking rationally when they do things like that.
They're not thinking, oh, well, I won't get money, so I guess I'm not going to have sex, or I'll put a condom on this time. So that's going to stay the same. And then these kids that need financial support aren't going to get the financial support they get. So not only do they not have a father, now they have a mother who's broke, so they're going to be put in an even worse situation and probably go commit even more crimes. It just seems like this is only going to make everything worse. This is like Mao's great idea where he decided to just make steel, and then everyone ended up dying.
No, so if you assume that women have a right to abort, if they know
do,
that they
'cause
won't get welfare, they will have an abortion. Like, a woman will abort if she knows she won't get welfare.
I don't know if that's... But I'm actually curious to find out, like, the decision-making process behind why women get abortions. I don't know, but I have a feeling
it's because
they don't
want to take responsibility.
No, that's not...
Reason.
That's... No, that's not it at
What
all.
other reason is there?
They want to put themselves in the best situation they possibly can in order to live the most fulfilling, successful life they possibly can.
Okay.
And having a kid would probably throw a giant wrench into that. Like, especially, let's say there's a 21-year-old woman named Brenda, and she's currently in law school. She goes out one night, has a couple drinks with her friends, meets a cool guy, they go home and hook up, and the condom breaks, and they didn't realize it, and she gets pregnant. She could either, A, just nip it in the bud 2 weeks after she finds out she's pregnant, and she's not pregnant anymore, and she can go on and still get her law degree. B, she can have the baby and still try to get a law degree, which will make that much harder and thoroughly increases her chances of dropping out. Or C, she can drop out of school entirely and focus on spending the rest of her life taking care of this kid. If she wants to be a lawyer, like, I feel like if we force her to have this baby, then not only are we depriving her of her right to a life that she wants, we're depriving our society of a lawyer that could potentially be out there helping all these problems.
Alright, so first of all, women can still give up their children for adoption. Alright?
Yeah, but nobody's adopting
care
kids.
For it forever. It's just 9 or 6 months that she has to carry it more than she necessarily wants.
But that doesn't matter.
Second, so it's not 18 years, it's like 6 or 9 months she has to carry it out. So the next thing I want to say is she can have an abortion from if she really wants to, but she can't force the man to pay child support. That's what I'm saying. Both genders have the right to abort, or none of them have the right to abort. So in that case, Brenda can force a single drunk up to pay 18 years of child support if she has that child. The man can also say, I don't want to financially provide for this child. I told you can have the abortion or you don't. And
this is something that, like, I'm not necessarily 100% against the idea of what you're talking about. It just seems like I don't know enough, and it just seems like a really bad idea. It seems like you're only hurting the kid, and because again,
you can't say that I'm hurting the kid. Letting a child grow up without a father is the most cruel thing you can do to someone. It's incredibly cruel, and the rate of this dysfunctional families is just ridiculous.
So it sounds like you should be pretty pro-abortion then, access to abortion, because then there's no kid to be fatherless in the first place.
So let me take you to an adventure, right? Mm-hmm. So if let's say women have the right to abortion, mm-hmm. the logical conclusion would be men also have the right to abortion. They do financially provide for a child that they don't. Why do they have to? Why do women not have to take responsibility?
No, men have the right to abortion. Saying not financially supporting a kid is not abortion.
Though. Men don't, but you're saying they should have.
No, I'm saying Roe v. Wade gave the right to abortion to all people in America. The guys can't force a woman to have an abortion, no. But
men don't really have an abortion. They have to pay child support for 18 years or they go to prison. How is that a right to abort?
Sorry, we're getting lost in this semantics game. I'm saying that literally men have the same right to terminating a pregnancy that women have. Like, if they, as a couple, decide to terminate a pregnancy, they are allowed to do it. That's all I'm trying to say.
The woman doesn't even have to carry out the child.
But it's her body.
If the woman wants to, it has to pay 18 years of child support. How is having to pay 18 years of child support or going to prison equivalent to 9 months of carrying out a child and then giving it up to adoption? How is that equivalent? Both genders don't have the same right.
He's talking about something called legal paternal surrender. Sorry, I'm trying to read chat and talk to you too. They're probably...
A woman can force a man to pay child support for 18 years, but a man can't force a woman to carry out a child for 9 months. I don't think the woman... Okay, so the way I see it... Again, I see what you're saying, that they can divest
pre-child being born. But first of all, I don't think it's the woman forcing the man. I think it's the state that's forcing the man. Second of all, I don't see it as... Again, I think it's a bodily autonomy issue. I think abortion and then paying for the kid afterwards are two separate things. I think you're conflating the financial responsibility of a child and the actual process of abortion. I think you're conflating those things, and those need to be separated. When we're talking about child support, we're talking about a child that is alive and that needs support. And when we're talking about abortion, we're talking about a woman trying to take control of her own body. And I get what you're saying in that a man, once a woman is pregnant, doesn't have the same say in whether or not the pregnancy comes to terms that the woman has. And I don't know, maybe there's something we need to do there. Is that just legal abortion? Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to get to too. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by chat. Is that illegalizing abortion doesn't really seem to lower the numbers of abortion. It just seems to make it harder for people that are in the lower it just seems to make it harder for people that already have a hard time to get an abortion. But anyways, I'm really bad about sidetracking. Yeah, I just don't think the two are necessarily like equal. I don't think that saying a man should be able to financially divest himself from the life of a child is the same as saying a woman should be forced to revoke her right to her own bodily autonomy. I just don't see those as the same thing.
If you have to work 18 years and pay $500 of money per month, you have to work additional hours, and forcing another person to work and do stuff with their body is violation of bodily autonomy. If you force someone to work, it's slavery and it's a violation of bodily autonomy. Why can the state and women force a man to work without this?
I don't know if you're, and I really don't know, laws in general disproportionately the effect of poor. Yes, it's true. I don't know if you're framing how child support works correctly. I'm pretty sure, isn't it like proportional to the amount of money you make? And I know that there are guys that get screwed by child support. Like, I'm not trying to say that there aren't guys out there that get royally screwed by child support. It's
proportional. It's proportional if you make a shit ton of money, like over 100k, but before that, it's like the graph shows.
So I'll have to look at it again. I was having a hard time following the graph, honestly.
If a man makes 1 million,
so this is their wages,
40,000.
So okay. So okay. But I mean, I don't know. It seems to me that, I don't know. I just have a hard time. It seems to me that the best outcomes, if you're purely looking at outcome centered, the best outcomes come from when women have higher access to, like Planned Parenthood, to contraception, to sexual education. It seems like the best outcomes come from just general education and better access to these things. Like, I don't know, this is one of the things, like, this is why I don't like the super lefty people, is because they don't want to admit that, like, men are screwed over and that child support can be really bad for guys. Like, I'm happy to admit that there are men out there that get completely screwed over by child support, they get completely screwed over by the courts, who aren't allowed to see their kids when they want to, who aren't allowed to be in their kids' lives when they want to. This is a real problem, and it happens, and we need to address it. I think the solutions you're giving are, like, so extreme and won't fix the problem. They'll just make things worse.
Let me make up a law, alright? So there is a law. If a man wants to financially abort, he has to go to the woman while she's pregnant and tell her, I want to financially abort this child. I will never see the child again, and I won't have to take responsibility for it. You can decide if you want to abort the child right now. That would be a law. Would you be fine with that?
For men to just be able to say, I don't want any part in this kid's life?
Yes.
No, because...
and then they tell... Why? Your woman can still abort. They have to go to the woman and tell her. She can still abort the child if she wants to.
But that's... I think the real thing that I have here that I think that we might agree on is that I don't see the way that you're conflating it, that a man should just be able to completely financially divest. I don't think that's the same as a woman having an abortion.
Women can do that too. Women don't have to take care of the child if they don't want to. Why should men be forced to do that?
Because there is no child in the woman's case. In the man's case, there is a child. In the woman's case of aborting it, there is no child to be taken care of.
Well, if she doesn't abort, then there's a child.
Yeah, and then he has to pay. Then he has to pay child support. Because there's a child. Like, that's the main crux of it, I guess, is that the only thing that I think that we might agree on is that maybe fathers should have more say in whether or not the woman goes through with the abortion. But then again, I would just go back to, it's her body. Nobody, the state especially, cannot force her to do things with her body that she does not want to do.
But the state is forcing the man to do stuff with his body that he doesn't want to do.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty, like, if you want to keep going down that like argument,
So
that sounds like
I
a pretty.
I get what you're saying. If the man doesn't pay child support, the child would starve or the woman would starve, and that would be bad. Yeah, I get that. But my solution is don't have children outside of wedlock at all and just have stable families.
Which, like, that's wonderful. And like Karl Marx wrote a great book about utopias. That like in a perfect utopia, that would be wonderful. And I don't know, man. It seems like a lot of the stuff that you're saying kind of seems like Marxist. Like the idea that the society that we're in.
I'm not Marxist.
That's fine. I'm just saying the idea that the state is forcing you into slave labor because you have to pay for this stuff. Like, I don't know, man. I just want a place to live. I just want a place to live, and I'm forced to work.
So I'm kind of making the arguments from your perspective that both genders are equal and like have the same abilities and responsibilities.
Except for basketball. Men are better at basketball.
So from my perspective, both genders don't have same responsibilities and same authority and rights. But from your perspective, they should have, and I was arguing from that perspective. If the woman has it right, the man should too.
I get it. I don't make the same connections that you're making. Like I get the point that you're trying to make. I don't see the same connections there. If it's cool with you, I'm going to take 1 second to address the chat and talk to them real fast. But then we can get back into it. Is that cool with you?
Yes.
All right. Cool. Let's see. People respond to incentives. It's the basis of game theory. The only problem is that people have skewed perceptions of incentives. They're gamblers. If people completely understood the benefits and consequences of marriage and children, they wouldn't participate, period. Yes, Jeffosaurus, I agree with a lot of that. But at the same time, I don't think that... I find it hard to believe that like a mother in a marriage would get out of it specifically because she wants money from the government, but I don't know. Maybe that happens more than I know. Is that just legal abortion? I'm not sure what we were talking about there. Laws in general disproportionately affect the poor. It's true, not necessarily because they're targeted to the poor, but because the rich have a much easier time getting out of it and finding ways to meet loopholes and stuff. They have a lot better assets to help them out. I'm interested to know, Onion Helmet wants to know if you support non-Western immigrants in Europe, Armin?
No, I don't.
All right, cool. I'd be happy to talk about that in a bit too, but I'm not too. You probably know way more about Europe than I do. Brindle, I'm sorry, Brindle, I don't know how to say your name. I'm just going to call you Brinadil. What's Armin's policy suggestion regarding abortion? I guess, would you make it completely illegal, but you want to you basically want to make it illegal to have kids outside of wedlock in general?
From your perspective, it would be both genders have the right to abort. So both genders don't have to take responsibility from the child if they don't have to.
Okay.
From my perspective, it would be nobody has the right to abort, and children are it's only legal to have children in wedlock in a functional family.
All right. Onion Helmet just don't have children. LMAO, that's the right move. That's what I'm doing. I think it works pretty well. I won't, but adults keep having them. That's funny. Yeah, the problem is that you just want to massively punish the child. Western European thing is meaningless. Every decade, a new group of people are called white, European, and Western. Yeah, that's my big argument against the whole idea of non-Western, non-white, whatever. Jews, Italians, and Irish people weren't historically considered white. Even Germans weren't considered white in America at the founding of America.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were considered swarthy, which is like the idea of whiteness has changed massively over time.
Probably because of National Socialism, because they didn't like that.
Well, no, I'm talking about like in the 1700s, like at the formation of America. The Americans, when people first started immigrating to America, they wanted to keep it, white and whatever, but they didn't consider the Irish necessarily white. They didn't consider the Italians necessarily white, and the Germans definitely not. They were seen as like barbarians and like not as cultured as they were.
Was that the time when America rebuilt Germany because the Soviet Union would have otherwise taken it?
No. I'm talking about 1700s, dude. Like I'm talking about 18th century.
I don't know a lot about that.
Oh, I'm talking about like American Revolution, like way before any of this. I'm talking about anyways, micro-trolling now, Omega. That's right, Jeff. Collectivism is a problem with both right and left. It's slightly different. Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem agreeing with that. Golden One just made an announcement. Oh, speaking of Onion Helmet, I need to read your fucking wall of text. Anyone who says the Golden One is not a smart guy is probably a 20-year-old something living with his parents and spends all day on a computer jerking off to cartoons and listening to emo cringy music. The Golden One at age 25 was twice the man you will ever be, and at 50 he will be quadruple of a human anyone will ever be. The Golden One is saving Europe with his YouTube channel and is the only champion of free speech. Fuck anyone who says the Golden One is not a goddamn demigod. He's also fucking massive. Take a bullet for the Golden One. Are you familiar with the Golden One, Armin?
What Golden One?
He's a YouTuber. He's a Swedish Swiss. He's one of those. He's a YouTuber. He's into like I I don't know your points of view, but I imagine you two might agree on some stuff. He's
What was
the
what was his name again? Golden what?
the golden one.
No, I haven't heard of him.
Yeah, I don't know. You might like him. I'm not a big fan. I think he's kind of funny, but he, from what I understand, y'all might have a lot in common or might agree on a lot.
The YouTube algorithm doesn't really promote anything right leaning, so no.
Whoa, I would highly disagree with that, but that's a discussion for a different time. I very almost fell down the whole right-wing YouTube rabbit hole because I started off with like some anti-SJW stuff and blah blah blah. I used to watch Dave Rubin and all that and Steven Crowder until I realized they're dumb.
Well, like I was so they aren't really that right leaning. Like I watch more right leaning stuff, but like 1 or 2 years ago, the algorithm promoted right leaning YouTubers much more, but in the last year it really stopped.
Yeah, me too, Brindle. Man, I don't know. I think that's such like an anecdotal experience that each individual experiences. That like I know from my point of view, whenever I started watching stuff like that, I guess was kind of like skeptic anti-SJW. It pretty quickly started pushing me to like some pretty not like alt-right stuff or anything like that, but to like some more farther right-wing leaning people like Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin and Steven Crowder and a lot of people like that until I finally figured out that they're not great. Yeah, Brindle says, my YouTube is full of right-wing suggestions. Yeah, it happens. I think it depends on who you watch and the algorithm will start picking up on it. I would not be surprised in any way, shape, or form, though, Armin, if they have tried to change it to curtail some of that, the algorithm pushing them. But I want to say, like, I'm pretty sure YouTube... right-wing YouTube is like much bigger on the political spectrum than left-wing YouTube is, unless you consider things like Jimmy Kimmel to be a left-wing YouTube channel.
What exactly do you mean with political spectrum?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm pretty sure I'll have to find it, but I'm pretty sure basically from what it is, right-wing YouTubers who like that's what they do get exponentially more views on YouTube than left-wing YouTubers, unless you consider people like Jimmy Kimmel and like super corporate things to be left wing.
Well, that's because right-leaning people who have right-leaning views don't really have any other platform to speak publicly. Universities are very left-leaning, schools too. Where else do you want to go?
Yeah, that's if I'm going to agree with you on anything there, I don't necessarily. And this is probably purely anecdotal because I live in Texas and I went to a college in rural Texas, which is pretty conservative. But I know that I never experienced like a liberal bias. I even took a feminism class in college and I hated it because I was very anti-feminist back then. But now I've kind of come more towards the middle. But
what kind of stuff do they teach there? Did they talk to you about the
patriarchy? Is that what you said? You cut out.
Kind of stuff?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff did they teach?
I don't remember exactly everything they taught us, but they basically taught us the general theory of like the patriarchy. And I mean, that's one of the reasons I don't consider myself a feminist is I don't necessarily agree with their idea of the patriarchy. I don't necessarily agree with methods that mainstream feminist thought. And that's the thing too, like when you say feminism, it's such a huge area of study and so many people within the field of feminism disagree with each other that it's hard to say that there is just like one feminist perspective.
I'm referring to first wave feminism, like working, voting, that stuff, not everything that feminists have said in the last 20 years.
Yeah, but aren't we in like more of the third wave than the first wave now? Isn't first wave like 1912 like getting women basic rights like right to vote?
Yeah, first wave was a long time ago.
Yeah.
We're like in the third or fourth wave.
Yeah. I don't know. Whenever I look at our society and I say who is causing the most issues in our society and who's causing the most problems, I see way more problems coming from the right than I do from feminists. So I don't really have an issue with feminists.
Well, you can't compare the entire right to feminists. You have to compare the right to leftists. And,
okay, yeah.
From my...
I think you broke out. I don't know if you're still talking or not.
No, I'm okay.
Oh, okay. YouTube's probably the most right-wing of the massive social media platforms. YouTube was founded by Lenin, which is the main color is red. Content-based speech restrictions are presumptively illegal in the U.S. If you get censored at college, call fire. Yes, okay, so that's what we were talking about. Yeah, no, that's something that, like, I think somebody like Milo Yiannopoulos is cancerous and a terrible person, and his ideas are worthless. But I personally would never protest his right to, like, speak at a college, right? Because I'm very, very, very pro free speech. I would very, very much support the rights of people that want to protest him, and I would say that they have every right to protest, and they should, but I think that their rights start ending when they start preventing other people from going in there. But their argument would be that people like Milo Yiannopoulos are calling for the subjugation and removal of rights from other people, therefore his very presence and the words that he is saying are inherently violence. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I also have no issue with a college of their own volition, a private college. If it's a public college, then no. But a private college should be able to say, no, we won't have people speaking here. That way, if, like, Brigham Young University doesn't want to have, I don't know, who's some super Linda Sarsour speak there, you know, right? Like, they should be able to say, no, we don't want you speaking here. And the same goes the other way. I do have a problem with deplatforming in general, though, which is like why there were people telling me not to, like, talk to you, and I'm like, I don't know, I disagree with everything he says, but I don't think he's a bad faith actor. Like, you seem very upfront with what you're saying, and I'd rather talk to somebody who's upfront with what they believe, even if I think it's not good. So yeah, if we're talking about censorship on colleges, like, I don't really give a shit about so-called censorship on platforms like YouTube, because I feel like there are terms of service, and these people pretty obviously broke terms of service. If we want to talk about that, then you're going to have to convince me that Facebook and YouTube are a utility first, and if you can convince me of that, then yes, I will be on board for the no banning people off these platforms.
So the argument that comes often is that not free speech but hate speech should be censored, right?
Some people argue that, yeah.
What exactly is hate speech? In my opinion, hate speech is threats of violence and threatening someone.
I'm doing good, Dung James. How are you, buddy?
If you say, I support ideology X, I think X is great, that's not hate speech, that's just free speech. As long as you're not threatening someone, it's okay.
Yeah, you're not necessarily wrong, but there are some ideologies that are inherently threatening to other people because of things that they can't, like Nazism is inherently threatening to Jews and to minorities. Like, the pure ideology, like, it is an ideology, but a part of their ideology is remove these people violently. So, like, that ideology is inherently violent, right? So, like, okay, so if we're talking about censorship, no, I don't believe on a legal sense that hate speech necessarily exists. And when I say that, I mean, I don't think there's anything that a person can say that's not a direct call to violence. The government can come in and say, no, you can't say that. If somebody wants to talk on and on about how they think white people are better than anybody else and how they think blah, 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 like, that's fine. Well, it's not fine, but the government shouldn't be able to come in and stop them. The problem that I have is on platforms like YouTube that are privately owned companies that have terms of service that clearly line out, like, hey, LGBT are a protected class, you can't come on here and harass them and ridicule them. And if somebody does that and then they're kicked off, I don't have an issue with it because it's a private company. Like, people like Dave Rubin always say, if a baker doesn't want to cook a cake for gay people, find another baker. All right, if you want to have a place where you can spew hatred towards people and YouTube doesn't want it, then find something else. If there isn't one, make it. Capitalism, baby. That's we keep getting sidetracked. I'm really bad about that.
Are you still reading chat, or are you now talking with me again?
Oh, sorry, I'm talking with you again. I'm sorry, I should have
all right.
I should have made that clear.
I have some other abortion arguments. So, we said that everyone has the right to do with their own body what they want, right? So
more or less, yes.
The conclusion would be yes. So if a doctor doesn't want to do an abortion, if he thinks it's immoral, the doctor doesn't have to do the abortion.
Well, yeah. If you're a doctor that doesn't think abortions are moral, you should probably become an optometrist or something. Like, I don't know.
No. You doctors shouldn't have to change their whole thing. Right. I'm just saying, if a woman can't force a doctor to have an abortion, he doesn't have to be abortion if he doesn't want. Does the United States force doctors who don't want to perform abortions? I don't know if that happens. I don't know exactly.
I just don't know if this is a real problem that exists, or is this just a hypothetical?
Yeah, I was just asking. Do you think that women should be able to force doctors to do an abortion, even if they think it's?
No. From the way you're presenting it, do I think that women should be able to force doctors to perform an abortion. No.
Yeah, yes. So your answer is no. All right, okay. I'm fine with that. So
Yeah, I'm sorry. Before we go, the only time that I can ever think that is maybe if, due to legislation, there are literally no other options, and the doctor's first. When you become a doctor, your first goal is to help your patients in the way that they want. And if there are literally no other options, and this doctor is just refusing to do his job that he promised in his Hippocratic oath to do, then we'll have a conflict of interest. But that's a pretty extreme example. But generally, yes, I agree with you. Yes, I will say yes.
So, all right. So in America right now, I don't know what the situation is, but does the state pay the abortion, or do the women themselves pay?
Basically, when it comes to healthcare in America, never assume the government pays for anything. That's a good rule of thumb.
I mean, theoretically, does the government pay, or the woman herself?
Oh, it's out of pocket. It's not covered by insurance, which would still be not government. No, somebody in chat correct me if I'm wrong, but no, abortions are out of pocket. Like everything in the American healthcare system is out of pocket.
Yeah, so I also don't think that abortions should be healthcare or state funded. If you go by the rule, everyone can do with their own body what they want, the logical conclusion would be women can force taxpayers to pay their abortions.
I mean, the government forces taxpayers to pay for things that they don't want to pay for, inherently. Taxes. I don't want to be overseas right now in the Middle East, but my taxes still go towards paying for that. It's just going to happen. Some people ideologically oppose things that their taxes will eventually end up paying for. If you assume that, out of every tax dollar, literally 1% of it goes to this and whatever, blah, blah, blah. If you want to break it down like that. That's just, it's going to happen. If everyone could opt out of taxes that paid for things that they were ideologically opposed to, we would be fucked up, or we'd be in a real different situation. I would not pay for taxes for our wars overseas. I would not pay taxes for lots of things if I could just opt out of things that I ideologically disagreed with.
Yeah, I agree on that. People shouldn't be forced to pay taxes if they don't want to. But they also shouldn't be able to get the benefits of it if they don't pay.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeff, what's wrong with what? And then, I don't, people, I don't know, it just seems like we can either, if we want to talk about tax reform, that is a completely different thing. I just don't really see how you can say that people should be able to opt out of spending of any of their tax money. They should be able to opt out of paying taxes that might go to abortion, but that they shouldn't be able to opt out of taxes that go to other things that they would disagree with.
No, I'm just saying that people can opt out of taxes completely, but they don't get any benefits.
But see, a lot of these things, they don't seem applicable at all. How is somebody gonna, how could I opt out of taxes and then exist without using things that have been paid for by taxes? I couldn't use the internet even if I paid for a private company, because a lot of that cabling was set down using tax money. I couldn't ever use any of the roads or sidewalks. I couldn't use the mail.
I mean welfare. Or sending your kids to school for free. That's what I mean.
But I mean, it seems like you're picking and choosing things too, that you're gonna prevent people from using if they don't want to pay taxes. And kids aren't sent to school for free. The schools are paid through by taxes. But I guess that's what you're saying too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
More roads. Yep. Sorry.
I'm saying that institutions like healthcare, school, universities, every institution that is tax funded should be accessible for people who don't want to pay tax.
But there's so much that's tax funded, people literally couldn't exist.
Net taxpayers could, people who pay more into the state than they get out of, they could survive without tax benefits.
I don't know. It seems like making taxes voluntary for a big portion of people.
So do you know what a net taxpayer is?
A net N-E-T?
Yes.
So you're basically saying that they are a net gain, the government is making money off them as opposed to spending money on them?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a person who throughout their lifetime pays more into the state fund, state, than they take out of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really small part of the population. And that part of the population is also disproportionately out of men. So men are the most net taxpayers. The average man, men work more often full time, and they work more, and they don't they get less welfare from the state. So men are usually the ones who are the net taxpayers. And yeah, so what I'm saying is that women shouldn't really be able to vote themselves men's money.
I mean, why don't we, instead of saying that women shouldn't be allowed to have access to these things, why don't we try to invest in women's education and putting them in the same place that men are, so that women are more of a net benefit on taxes than a net drain? Why don't we try to empower them?
Because that's absolutely impossible.
Why? Every suggestion you've given for me now seems incredibly impossible. I think empowering women to make them a more net gain seems incredibly reasonable.
Like, you can't empower women beyond their biology. A woman's fertility window is still between 18 and 35. Every woman, like most women, more than 95%, have children between 25 and 30.
Yeah.
So, let's say you give a woman, you spend $100,000 of tax money on a woman, give her a free ride to university, let her become a doctor, whatever, and then at 30 she gets 3 children and doesn't work for 15 years. What then?
I don't know.
Having children is just too big of an obstacle for women to have a proper.
But in this situation where she has 3 kids and she's taking care of them, I'm assuming you're talking about she's in a relationship, right? Like she's married. Why does the man in the relationship, why is he a net benefit and none of the money that he makes from his job? Why do we just consider the woman a net drain because she doesn't have a job, and we don't take into account the fact that she enables the man that she is with to have the job that he has in order to be a net gain? Why don't we consider that? It seems like you're using very basic.
If you consider the children that the woman has, woman would be a net gain because of the value that they provide via children.
So why aren't you considering that?
Who don't have, because you can't give babies direct value. They aren't money. They are just children. They pay taxes sometime later.
Yeah, but even not talking about the kids, why are you comfortable with saying that in an equal relationship between a man and a woman, when a woman stays home to watch the kids that the man wanted, and the man is quote unquote a net gain on taxes because he actually works and his name is on the paycheck, why do you not extend any of that to the woman who enables him to do all this? He couldn't do this if he was a single dad.
In that situation, yes, the woman is providing equal amount of value because she takes care of the children and enables the man to work.
Yeah.
But without a relationship, without children, women are a net loss for society. Single women are a net loss for society. So giving a woman high education and spending thousands of dollars on education on her won't get you anywhere, because in the end she will still have children because of her biology.
I mean, maybe. I know plenty of women that don't have kids and don't want them, and maybe, I don't know. I don't really think it's necessarily all biology.
The vast majority of women have children at some point in their lives.
Probably. And but having a child doesn't necessarily mean you'll be a net drain, and being a net financial drain that's not inherently a bad thing. Like, you could be providing other services that the world needs and still be a net financial drain. Like, if you're only looking at tax money, like, that's a very narrow way to, like, try to judge the value of a person.
Well, the value that gives the thing that gives women value is the ability to have children.
No, I don't. I could not give any less of a shit about somebody's ability to have children.
Right. So what other value are they providing except for using up taxes?
Women? Like, as a whole? Friendship, companionship. They're increasingly going to college at higher rates. They're increasingly joining the ranks of doctors. It seems like now that we've given them much better access to higher education, they're starting to show that they're actually equally to, if not smarter than men. Like, not on the whole, but
it's the complete opposite. Like, the divorce rates have been increasing.
That has nothing to do with
female happiness has been going down since the 1970s. Birth rates are trash. Immigration is off the charts because of low birth rates. The welfare state is blowing up. The welfare state is going bankrupt. It's all going down.
I don't give, like, okay, the low birth rates thing is actually a good sign. Any culture that starts becoming any culture that starts being prosperous, their people will start having less kids. If you look at, like, Somali immigrants to America, by, like, the third generation, I think, like, the first generation, they're having something like 5 or 6 kids, and by the third generation, once they've been able to establish a family and, like, integrated to American society, they're down to, like, the normal birth rate of people. It's like people that are more successful and that come from better first world countries inherently will have have lower birth rates because they don't have the need to have as many kids. It has nothing to do with like replacement or anything. If you look,
that's not completely true. The most huge factor that determines the birth rate of a nation is the woman's education level. In Africa, women have like 4 or 5 children because they have like no education, also no sexual education. In countries like Europe, where women are more than ever going to universities and having education, the birth rate goes down. Why? Because they work and they're basically forced to work because the husband doesn't make enough money to provide for a family alone. That's why the birth rate is so low in countries where women work and have education.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're agreeing with me. It sounds like in places where women and people are generally more educated, where they have more money, where they're better off, where they don't have to work the fields, they're generally having less kids. So like there's...
It's not people, it's women.
But I'm not talking about just women, I'm talking about people in general. No, I mean, obviously women are having the kids, men don't have kids.
The amount of money a man makes doesn't have any influence in how many children he has. If a woman makes millions of dollars per year, she won't have lots of children.
I'm not talking about individual people, though. I'm talking about people as a whole. On the whole...
Yes, in general.
Yeah. The more affluent a people are, the more better off they are, the lower the birth rate gets.
It's not people, it's women. The man's education level doesn't have anything to do with it. It's the woman's education level that determines how many children there are.
So I guess it comes down to your goal. Is your final goal just for women to have more kids? Like, what's the goal?
My goal is a birth rate of 2.1.
Why?
Because that is the birth rate you need for a nation to be stable and the population not to be shrinking or overgrowing too much.
What's wrong with the population? I mean, yeah, there are bad things, overgrowing. But like, why...
Shrinking or overgrowing?
I'm pretty sure, aren't we supposed to stabilize like as a planet in like the next 10 years or something? Because as we start investing more in like countries like continents like Africa that are having ridiculous amounts of kids, their birth rates are starting to lower too. There's going to be a point where we literally just cannot have more kids. Like, and especially in a country like America, that's more of a worldwide issue than a country like America. I'm pretty sure in America we're having no issue with running out of people or with like our rates declining. I'm pretty sure we're like good.
Well, under normal circumstances, shrinking population wouldn't be such a big problem, but Europe and America is a welfare state. A welfare state needs taxpayers to survive and funds itself. If you have a welfare state and a shrinking population, you're basically forced to take in people from outside for the welfare state to not collapse, and that's why it doesn't work. The combination welfare state and low birth rates doesn't work.
Why? But I guess I just don't see what the problem is. What's wrong with bringing in people into your country? I'm pretty sure the best way to improve your economy is to bring in immigrants.
The only societies that have a birth rate so high that they can send immigrants to other countries are patriarchal societies, but the birth rate is above 2.1, right? In our world right
is that
now,
per woman or per couple?
Basically per couple.
Okay.
Per woman, I mean. Per
woman, all right.
Yeah, so the only societies who have birth rates above 3 or 4 are patriarchal societies. So that's basically only Muslims, right? Muslims are the only group of people who have patriarchal societies, and the women have more than 3 or 4 children.
Sure, I'll accept it at face value.
Yeah, so the problem, Islam is basically a fascist religion who isn't comparable with democracy and basically peace at all.
You could say the same thing about Christianity.
Violent. No, you can't. So the first problem is circumcision in Islam. They cut off their sons' foreskins.
Yeah, they do that in America. I'm circumcised. It's normal.
No, it's not.
In the United States, it 100% is. There are more men that are circumcised than uncircumcised.
In your country, maybe, but you shouldn't force anyone to cut off a piece of their...
You shouldn't force a woman to live for 9 months with another person living inside her.
You shouldn't force a man to pay 18 years of child support.
I mean, you should...
So...
okay. Well, we've already gone through all that.
First problem is it's not comparable with democracy. They aren't. They don't like democracies. They are basically fascist. They only support Islamic parties, basically.
I don't know. I have some Muslim friends that will go out and eat some bacon and drink some beers, and like I don't.
Those immigrants are very strongly religious. Your friends maybe not, but those immigrants are.
Yeah, but
so basically. And if you read even more about Islam, you will find out that they basically see non-Muslim women as sex slaves. They don't have a problem with basically taking over other societies with violence and force. and yeah, they also force the women to wear hijabs, and
I mean, you're talking about Islam like a monolith, though. Like, there are so many different people that subscribe to so many different types of belief systems within Islam. There are people from different countries that might have different authoritarian beliefs that are forced upon them. There are people that are more progressive within Islam. There are people that are more conservative within Islam. Like, I don't do any religions. Like, I have no love lost for Islam, but to pretend that it's like it's way, way, way worse than Christianity in a lot of reasons. Like, in America, worldwide, maybe in America, I am much more worried about what the Christian right is trying to do than what Muslims are trying to do.
So in Europe, the influence of immigrants is way stronger than in your country, and I can tell you it's terrible.
Muslim immigrants.
Taking in Muslims, Muslim immigrants, it doesn't work. It's terrible for the economy. They use up welfare. Their birth rates is off the charts. They don't have a problem with raping or assaulting women. It's not good. It doesn't work.
I have a hard time accepting at face value that Muslims that immigrate into Europe don't have a problem with raping women. I have no problem. I understand. Like, see, the problem that I have with this is the conclusions that are being drawn, and probably from what I understand, if you look like 2 or 3 generations in, I'm pretty sure a lot of these immigrants, most of the families integrate within the society that they come into pretty well, and they start, like, the numbers start normalizing out to what you would expect from natural citizens.
Immigrating has skyrocketed in the last 10-20 years because of the welfare state. Earlier, only those immigrants who wanted to contribute to society immigrated. Now everyone is immigrating because of welfare.
Well, I mean, if you're coming from, I'm pretty sure in places like Germany, isn't it mainly refugees and not just immigrants? Because there's a very big distinction between refugees.
Really refugees.
But how can you
say they are refugees?
How can you just say? But see, your whole argument relies on me just accepting that they're not really refugees, and just accepting that the government isn't doing their due diligence bringing these people in.
Well, refugees come from places where there is war. If you would somehow be able to check their background, I heavily doubt that most people come from Syria.
I mean, it doesn't have to just be Syria, though, because a lot of these Muslim-majority countries are generally not very stable to begin with. Like, we have a lot of people in America trying to get here from Ecuador. Ecuador isn't necessarily like a terrible place, but there's a lot of violence there, and there are people who get, through no fault of their own, caught up in it and get their lives, in jeopardy, and they have to come to America to try and live.
So do you think we should send money to everyone on the earth who has bad conditions?
I'm sorry, that we should what?
Should we give everyone on the entire world welfare?
No, that doesn't solve anything. I think we should do whatever we can to try and fix the situation that they're in. Giving people money directly doesn't fix it necessarily, but
so how do you solve Islam?
How do I solve Islam? Man, if it was up to me, nobody would be religious at all. But that's a different...
Yeah, but that doesn't work. How do you prevent Muslims from cutting off their sons' foreskins and putting their women in hijabs and thinking it's normal to rape non-Muslim women?
I just personally don't really care about the foreskin thing. Like, I know, I get the arguments, and, like, honestly, I would probably, much like vegans, I would probably be willing to admit to you that you're probably right. I just don't care about it. I'm more worried about FGM than foreskin stuff. The hijab stuff, too, I am not a big fan of any sort of compulsory. But see, this all comes down to religion in general, not just Islam. Like, Christianity has tried to do this stuff, and it has been reformed, and it has been moved into the modern age of secular values.
Well, it's possible to reform Christianity. It's impossible to reform Islam.
Why?
If you try to reform Islam, you're a traitor.
No,
it's
I know.
In the book, it's not possible.
Yeah, look at American Muslims. American Muslims are incredibly westernized and
yeah, that's the influence of Western society.
Yeah.
If you take them out in a vacuum of Islam, they are extremely violent.
But you can say that
the influence of Europe and Western countries that has made them so less threatening.
I mean,
in a vacuum.
You are familiar with the history of Christianity, though, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like, Christianity used to be the most violent religion in the world. Yeah, why can you say
reform Islam?
Why not? Why do you think you can just say you can't reform Islam?
It's illegal to reform it according to the book in the Quran. It says
it was for Christianity too. Jesus said, "Not a word, not an iota of the law will change. I have come to affirm the law, not to not to change the
anyways,
law.
they somehow reformed Christianity.
Yeah, so why can't we do that
They
for
won't
Islam?
Reform Islam.
It's hard, dude. It's hard. It's violent. It's a difficult thing to do, especially on a massive scale, and especially for a religion like Islam that doesn't really like to be criticized. Christianity was the same way, and there was a lot of pain that happened when in the middle of it transforming. But slowly, over time, there were gradual changes made, and it seems like as we as a society became more secular and we learned more, we decided, oh, okay, gay people probably don't have a choice. It's probably not a good thing to tell them that they're perverts and throw them off buildings. There are a lot of most westernized, I don't want to say westernized because that gives a bad, most secular Muslim people agree with that too. And I use secular in the sense of like secular Christians in America, or like basically ones that have decided that they can use secular ideals to help mold their religious ideals instead of the other way around.
What exactly means secular?
Just non-religious, like basically taking. So secular in this case would be like somebody in a religion saying, this is what my religion says, this is what the empirical data says, I'm going to go with the empirical data over my religion.
Well, they can live out their religion as long as they're not violating any laws.
Yeah, of course, everyone can.
Well, Muslims violate laws. They think that gay people should be stoned to death.
I mean, not necessarily once they've been integrated into a society that doesn't believe that.
That's the influence of Western society.
Yeah, for sure.
Without the influence of Western society.
I mean, maybe not.
How do you Westernize a 30-year-old Muslim from Syria that doesn't want to learn the language? How do you do that?
I don't know, for that individual. Maybe we need somebody like a Martin Luther, like 95 Theses. Maybe we need somebody like that with Islam. I know Majid Nawaz over in England, he's doing his best as a Muslim to try and reform Islam from the inside. We just need that.
It's practically not possible to
You can't just say that, though.
Grown adults Muslim. They don't want to learn a new language. You can't teach a 30-year-old Muslim who thinks that Islam is the supreme religion to learn a new language and integrate. They won't do that. They won't accept gay people or No, they don't.
I mean, you can't just say no, maybe you can't. There are definitely people that are unintegratable.
Muslims won't accept.
I don't even know if you can say most. What if the issue is, I know in England there's an issue where there's a lot of Muslims being radicalized. What if the problem... Because these are all multifaceted issues that aren't just he's a religion, he's bad. What if a part of the issue is that in coming to this new country in order to make a better life for themselves, they realize that they're not as welcome as they thought they would be, and they're viewed as invaders, and they're seen as an outsider. So instead of trying to integrate in that society, they double down on their own bad ideas instead of listening to the good ideas that people from outside are saying. Because people are saying oh, well, you're a Muslim, so you're unreformable, so we're going to treat you like a piece of shit. When really they might be very reformable. I know, dude, and I don't know. I look at all the Muslims in America, and they are very, very secular. When I say secular, again, secular values, secular ideals. They are a very modernized people. They don't. I don't know.
Are you trying to defend Muslims who knife other people or who do acid attacks? You can't defend those people.
No. Are you trying to defend Christians that bomb abortion clinics, or I don't know? It happens.
No.
I mean,
no, I'm not. But in London, those people use knives to knife other people. They do acid attacks.
Yeah.
How do you defend those kind of people? Oh, he's just a victim. He wasn't integrated properly. It's our fault.
No, religion is cancerous for sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, definitely.
They are religious and they can't be convinced otherwise. You just have to kick them out. You can't take in radical Muslims.
Okay, you can say the same thing, but why are you only focusing on Islam, though, and not every other religion?
Because it's the most violent religion there is out there.
But you're also just assuming that there's no way to possibly reform it, and we've seen with basically every other major religion.
It's impossible.
Judaism was reformed, Christianity was reformed. These are all Abrahamic religions that aren't very far apart from each other. A lot of their...
In my opinion, it's practically impossible to reform Islam. If you try it, you will be deemed as a traitor and will be kicked out immediately. You can't do it. If you say, we should accept gay people, we should accept non-hijab wearing women, you are immediately a traitor and get kicked out.
I don't know. I know, this is anecdotal, but I know a lot of Muslims that don't care about that. They don't wear hijabs.
But those are westernized.
Yeah.
They don't live in Syria. They don't
so,
live in
so you might say
Iran or Iraq.
You might say that they're reformed?
If you grow up in the new country as a child from birth on, yes. But if you take in a 30-year-old adult immigrant, you can't reform.
But you know how you get that kid that was born in the country and grew up in that country? you got to bring in
You're
the refugee
taking
that
the
needs some help. Yeah. Which, like, you don't, but see, the whole point that from what I understand, like, no sort of immigration or refugee system that they have is going to be perfect. People are going to slip through the cracks. But from what I understand, the whole vetting process, which can take years potentially, the whole point is to try and weed those people out and to only bring the best people that you can in. There are going to be growing pains, for sure. People that come from these Muslim countries have some incredibly problematic views on women, on gay people, on LGBT people in general. Incredibly problematic views. I am not disagreeing with you in any way, shape, or form. I just don't think that saying that it's impossible. I just think it's really naive to say it's impossible for somebody that follows this religion to have like Western values. Because I see it every day. It happens all the time.
I think it's impossible to reform an adult human. You can maybe do it with children, but not with adults.
I mean, it's objectively not impossible. If by impossible you just mean more like...
It's practically impossible.
On a wide scale, maybe? I don't know, but like, what if... Like, why are they choosing to come to these countries in the first place then if they don't want to be a part of them? Okay,
Free.
probably. Yeah, I can see that. But if they're refugees that are coming from a terrible situation, why wouldn't they choose the places that have the best welfare?
Yeah, I get that. Of course, they will choose the places with the best welfare.
For sure. Let's keep this on the same spot. I'm going to catch up with chat real fast, and I will make sure to tell you very clearly whenever we're like fully talking again. I didn't do that last time. Protestantism was also illegal. Yes, true. Vote Yang. Cool. I'm cool with that. Omega lol, imagine the Protestant Reformation, but for the Islamic world. That would be pretty nice, don't joke. I only have $2, but there are some pigeons outside my window. What do I do? Throw the money at the pigeons. I like the part where the Pharisees at Jesus for washing his hands before dinner, and he replies, but you guys haven't even killed your disobedient children yet. Yes, there's a lot of contradictory stuff in Christianity, too. The difference between Martin Luther King and Islam is that Luther was complaining about the monolith of the Catholic Church. Islam is way more diverse from place to place. Yeah, that is true. They can't even stop killing each other over whether or not they want the... descendants of Muhammad to run it, but yeah. Onion Helmet wants to know if you're a pagan, Armin?
Pagan, you mean like the religion close to Christianity?
Paganism tends to... Usually pagan just means, is a general term for like what's the word I'm looking for? Not a monotheist, but a...
No, I'm not religious at all.
Okay, would you say you're an atheist?
Like in terms of, I don't think there's a god.
Yeah, the term that I normally use is agnostic atheist. Agnostic meaning I don't think it's possible to know anything about God. Atheist meaning because I don't know anything about God, I don't have a reason to believe in God.
Well, I don't think that God would be a living thing or like a human looking like existence, so I don't really believe in God. No.
Okay, I got you. Refer back to the I said Martin Luther King. Whoops, they're very different people. It said Martin Luther thing, and I said Martin Luther King. Haha. Yes, I do know the difference between Gnosticism and theism. Yeah, Gnosticism is... Yeah, no, it's really annoying, excessive madman, whenever people are like, you're an atheist, you know God doesn't exist. I'm like, no, I just don't think he does. Like, it's Gnosticism and atheism and theism are different things. In a parallel universe, the Europeans are trying to get into Syria, but Syrian Salvini won the election and pulled off a power move and is blocking them. I'm agnostic, a person who sits on the fence on every topic. It's true. All right, back to you, Armin. Sorry, I had to catch up with chat. Yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of things that are really problematic in Islam, and you won't get any argument from me there. Like, I am not a theist. If it was up to me, we would see the decline of religion all around the world, so that we could have more secular humanist values instead of trying to push these religious values on people. And that would probably, even though I don't really give a shit about circumcision, just because that's me, that would probably end things like circumcision, because there really are no good arguments for it.
Just a short question: would you circumcise your children?
I've actually thought about this. First of all, I don't really plan on having kids, but if I did, probably not. If you would have asked me a year ago, I would have said yes, because I am perfectly happy with myself having gone through that procedure, and I don't have any problems with it, and I actually probably prefer it, but I think anybody would prefer what they have known their whole life over something that they don't know. But because I don't really have any good arguments for why someone should do it, other than like very, very, very potential vague things that it would like risk some sort of, it would reduce risks of infection and stuff, that seems to be the only reason to circumcise. I probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's great. Don't circumcise.
Yeah. But that
No
being
matter
said,
what your wife says.
that being said, I'm perfectly happy with myself. I don't give a shit that I was. I prefer, actually, now that I do, that I am. But like, I only prefer it because that's the only thing I've known, right? Like, I have nothing else to compare it to.
Do you want to talk about it? It's a really depressing.
If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. I'm probably going to agree with you because
It's not that interesting for the viewers, probably.
yeah.
Like, Fortune talks a lot about circumcision, and it's really blackpilling.
Fortune, is this a YouTuber?
No, Fortune.
Oh, like the magazine? Like Fortune.
No, 4chan.
Oh, 4chan. God, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I was thinking Fortune, like Fortune 500. Yeah, 4chan. Yeah.
They have lots of threads about circumcision, and it's really blackpilling and depressing if you learn about it.
Yeah, no, it's like veganism. Like, I'll never be a vegan, but like most of the arguments for veganism are probably better than any arguments I have against it, but I'm just not going to go vegan because I don't give a shit enough. I'm a bit confused how Armin confuses Soviet Union 17th century. That's just a confusion. Don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. Anonymous hacker known as 4chan. Why are we Googling 4chan? We going on poll? No. I don't know, dude. I was just using my fingers to. I went on poll on another screen, but not here. But yeah, so I would assume that you're also against female genital mutilation then, or female circumcision.
Yes, of course I am.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. And I will say, like, if we want to talk about problems within Islam that we would probably agree with, I would say that yes, they very much push against any sort of reformation, but that's the same with any religion. Every religion wants to keep the status quo; they don't want to change. That's just inherent to religions. I don't like compulsory religious like garments or wear. Like, I don't like compulsory modesty. I don't like the hijab because it's presented as a choice, but it doesn't seem to be effectively a choice. It seems to be very compulsive, and they don't really have a choice.
The family just socially ostracizes the women who don't wear hijabs and basically leaves them poor on the street because they can't make any money without it.
Yeah. I still, like, on the opposite side, though, I would not push for any legislation outlawing it, because to me that's kind of compulsory in the other way. I don't like the idea of compulsory anything, which is religion does a lot of that. And it tries to frame it as though it's not compulsory when it really is. So, yes, I mean, like, you'll get no argument from me there.
So, not forcing a woman to wear a hijab is Islamophobic, or what?
It depends on what your motives for that are. If it's because...
The motive is to restrict female sexuality. Like, that's...
Well...
Like, preventing a woman from getting a husband using her looks is like...
Yeah. No, sorry. I was talking about the other way. Like, if you're going to try to ban the hijab or try to ban these practices, I would wonder, or if you're going to argue against things like the hijab, I just wonder what people's motivation are. But no, I generally don't like the idea of compulsory modesty or compulsory headwear, things like that. I am with you there. I don't like it. But I also don't know enough, and I also wouldn't tell a woman who's wearing a hijab that she needs to take it off and that it's blah blah blah. Like, unless we were having a conversation specifically about that, like, I'm not going to go up to a woman in a hijab and be like, you're being oppressed. Because, honestly, in America, at least, women probably generally do choose-ish, except, again, it's one of those things, like, in a Christian household, if you're gay, like, you can go be gay in private, but you probably can't come out to your parents. Well, I shouldn't say Christian. I should say, like super conservative house. You can't come out, even though you can technically go do it in public. Burden of proof is on the person making the claim. Victor J. Stinger wrote a book called "God Does Not Exist, Believe You're Being Oppressed." Rips off a jobbery. Yeah. So yeah, no, I don't like any of that stuff either. So you'll get no argument from me there, Armin.
All right.
What else? Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? What were we looking here? What have we talked about so far? We've talked about sexual liberation some. We've talked about abortion a little bit. We've talked about Islam a little bit. We've talked about circumcision a little bit, but you won't get any arguments from me there either. Let's see.
Did we address race and stuff?
Yeah, we can. This stuff makes me a little uncomfortable, but you know what? We can. I'm happy to.
Yeah, so your argument was that the differences between IQ on races are very, very slim, and it's basically because of infrastructure that Africa has such a low.
I would just say in general that I have not seen enough or any evidence whatsoever that there are any significant distinctions between IQ from people solely based on race.
It's only the environment, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying if you control for everything, the IQ numbers tend to like have negligible differences. But if you just, I think it's hard to make the leap that it is the person's race that is causing that their IQ is lower because of their race and not because of a whole bunch of different.
Well, there are biological arguments you could make that why people have higher IQs than other races.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Europeans. Europeans grew up in a cold environment with winters. People who live near the equator don't have winters and have more resources and can make food easier. So people in Europe had to evolve higher IQs to survive. That would be the logical argument from a biological perspective.
I mean, or you could say that they had like better access to resources, better access to nutrients, better access to all this stuff.
Access to resources. Making food in winter, agriculture is way harder in Europe than in African.
Yeah, but okay.
Hunting also.
First of all, we have to figure out how we. I don't really like using IQ as like a measure of somebody's intelligence or their worth because it's a pretty inherently flawed system as it begins, and it heavily favors certain things over others. There doesn't seem to be, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be any mainstream studies that show a correlation between.
Well, those studies are obviously politically incorrect. Nobody would study that ever because they would get huge backlash.
I mean, it has been studied though.
When?
I mean, this whole bell curve thing, isn't that like where the first idea, Charles Murray, isn't this like one of the first ideas of like race and, God, I'm not as read up on this as I should be, but isn't that like one of the first times that they tried to make the argument that race and intelligence are like connected? This has been studied like, I mean, this was the whole point. Like in modern science, it's not studied nearly as much because we've kind of come to a consensus that it's not true. But that's like what phrenology was. Like that's what we studied all throughout the 1800s. Like phrenology. Like I don't know if you're actually watching the stream. Yeah, it's in the alternative and pseudoscience. But it's like the study of people's skulls to like see what the differences are between race and the differences between IQ. And everything that they studied all came out, yeah, there's no difference. Like, we're all exactly the same.
I think that those studies were heavily biased. I doubt that there are no race differences.
Well, no, the conclusions that they made when they were doing phrenology in the 1800s were that there were differences between races and that white people were superior in every single way. But it's because their methods were incredibly flawed. They weren't actually using scientific methods to come to their conclusions. They had come to a conclusion and they were looking for evidence to help back up their conclusion instead of using the evidence to formulate a conclusion. So what I'm saying is, like, we have studied this stuff. And when we tried to use it for political gains, blah blah blah, but now that we've actually studied it and we haven't been able to come to the conclusion that race and IQ have any sort of significant negative correlation with each other, then I don't see why we would make that jump into just assuming that when there are so many factors that would go into why, like in America especially, on average white people have higher IQs than black people, yes, but we can't just say that means black people are dumber. There are so many different factors that go into why that might be that we need to take those into account. And then when people generally say black people have lower IQs than white people, they tend to use that as they tend to use that to push their idea that we need to separate the races and that we need to move them apart from each other. They never take that and say, we need to be investing more in these communities. We need to be doing whatever we can to try and help these people and bring them up to our level. That's the problem I have with all this race realism stuff.
So if I say IQ, I mean genetic intelligence, not what you learn in school or how much you learn.
What does genetic intelligence mean?
Well, the ability that your genes give you to have an IQ. If you go to school and educate yourself properly and eat enough, you can reach a maximum IQ of X, and that IQ X is higher for whites than for blacks.
Yeah. But I mean, I've never seen any sort of study that has ever showed a correlation. The only one that I think has ever come out.
There's tons of evidence for it. Like, black people are 13% of the population.
Yeah.
The amount of professors or teachers or wealthy people is less than 13%.
Yeah.
That's the easy way to.
Okay, so what do we draw from that? Do we just say that they're dumb, or do we say they're not given the same access to education, they're not given the same access to higher
They
education?
do have the same rights and opportunities.
Yeah, but no, they have the same rights. They don't have the same opportunities, not by any chance. And the same rights is like, kind of like legally they do, but our lawmakers are very good about hiding ways to take people. Like, for instance, we have like a lot of, in I think it was North Carolina, they recently tried to push like closing all. They tried to make it to where you need a very particular form of ID to vote, and then they closed down all the places to get those IDs in black communities, so that black people, if they wanted to vote, they had to take a day off work, which might be difficult if you're poor and you have to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They would have to take off time from work, drive 30 minutes to an hour outside the city to a certain location, get this very particular form of ID, come back home, go to another polling location on the other side of town farther away. Like, did they have the right to do all this? Of course they did, but they purposefully took away the access and the opportunity to do it, and that seems to play out constantly in the United States.
Like cities or like ghettos where there are a lot of black people tend to have a lot of crime and be very racist towards white people, so they probably set up the voting station in like a normal area where there are not so many black people, and that's the reason why they...
I mean, no, in North Carolina, I'll have to find this. The specific situation that I'm talking about, no, like the Supreme Court got into it and they said, you are specifically targeting black people with almost surgical precision. You are doing this to try and prevent black people from voting. That's only the specific situation I was talking about, like it happens.
Black people usually vote Democrat.
Yeah, that's why they wanted to stop them from voting.
Okay.
And Democrats tend to want to invest more money in their
Socialism.
not in social welfare programs and social net programs, not necessarily socialism. It depends on exactly what
So,
people like to, in America,
just-
people like to throw around the word socialism for everything. Like literally the right wing will call anything they don't like socialism. So like we got to really like nail that definition down.
So let me explain to you what exactly are the effects of welfare on a group of people. So if you give welfare to someone, or if you have a welfare state, you're basically rewarding irresponsible and bad behavior and punishing those who are productive and intelligent with taxes. So you're basically doing anti-evolution. You're rewarding bad genes and rewarding good genes and punishing good genes.
Why is it all?
That's the reason. Like the effect that welfare had on black people is so terrible and degenerate. It's like it made them so much worse off than they were earlier. Without welfare, the black people would all be in working families, criminality and drug abuse would be so low. It's Democrats and socialists, or like welfare pro people, who made the black community.
That seems like a really huge claim to make. Like I don't know, that just seems like a really big
also
claim.
the Democrat, like the amount of black babies being aborted is so disproportionately high. Like it's the Democrats who legalized abortion, and if you look at it from the perspective that there's so many black women aborting their black babies, it's like abortion is kind of racist.
I mean, no, there's probably more black women aborting black babies because they don't have the same access to sexual education. They don't have the same access to contraceptives. They don't have the same access to general education that helps them build an epistemology, that helps them build like a process of decision making. They don't have the same access to this stuff.
Why do you always try to justify irresponsible behavior with environment? Like, can't a person just be responsible for their own behavior?
Yeah, if we're talking about an individual, for sure, but if we're talking about groups of people, we got to talk about statistics. And statistically, you can correlate these things together, and you can build a correlation and a causation with these things together. If we're talking about giant groups of people on an individual level, sure, somebody was probably dumb and made a bad decision, but on the whole, if we know that we can take actions to help prevent this stuff, and if we know that investing in these communities can actually help resolve these issues, then we shouldn't just say, oh well, this person made a bad decision and he doesn't deserve it, so since this guy doesn't deserve it, we're not going to give it to all these other people that do deserve it.
How do we help them? Give them more welfare so they become more lazy?
No, I don't know. Just generally try to not make things so difficult. Just generally.
Welfare, maybe.
If by reducing welfare we can take some of that money and find different ways to invest it, maybe. I don't know. I don't have the solution here. I just don't think that jumping to all these conclusions saying like black people are bad because of these certain things that you believe, I just think that's kind of that's a big leap to make, I feel.
I'm not necessarily saying that black people are evil. I'm just saying that because they have slightly lower IQ, they tend to be using welfare more often, and that single mothers are the reason why the black community is so fucked up right now.
I mean, I feel like you're trying to have like very simplistic answers to incredibly difficult questions. The status of the black man in the United States goes back so far, and I mean, we're only what, like 60 years separated from Jim Crow laws that literally stopped black people from voting, and that's only like blatant. There were still things where they've, even today, like the situation I told you, we're still trying to stop black people from voting, from taking part in the democratic process, from doing things to better help their society. We have a police state that purposefully targets black men, even if you control for things like income, even if you control for other things, black people still get higher sentences for the same exact crimes. They still get punished for more crimes than white people do. Like there are a lot of factors that go into
crime
this.
rates, it's kind of justified. Like you know that statistic, right? 13% of the population, more than half of the crimes. Yeah.
Is it more than half? I thought it was like 40%, something like that.
It's more of the half.
It's very disproportionate. Yeah, it's very disproportionate, for sure.
It's really disproportionate. Like,
yeah,
how
for sure.
is it not justified to
say that it's their race?
Yes.
Because that's a huge leap. There are so many. You're taking one.
What else can it be?
But see, this is a pure fallacy. This is a fallacy from ignorance. This is saying I don't know what else it could be, therefore it has to be this. That's not how any of this works. You can't just say I don't know what it is, but all I see is that they all have the same color skin.
What factor makes millions of people be more criminal than another race?
There's not one. There's tons of them. There's hundreds of years of history leading up to this point, and tons of different factors that lead up to it. And
how does history affect an individual? These black people don't even really know a lot about history. They just live in the...
They don't have to know about history. They don't have to know about history for black people to never have had the same opportunity in America that white people have. When you're the descendant of slaves who were never given the chance to be educated, and as every day that you fought to try and reach these same levels of equality, you've been denied them this entire struggle. Like we made black people free, but they weren't really free because a lot of them had to go back on the plantations where they were and get paid pennies on the dollar for their job. Okay, then we eventually gave black people the right to vote, but we didn't actually let them vote because we put all these laws. We had lynching mobs going around. We stopped them from voting. All right, then we allowed them to vote, but then we had separate but equal laws to where they weren't granted the same access. Separate but equal is inherently not equal, so they weren't granted the same access. So we have people today whose grandparents literally could not vote because of these crazy laws that were put in the way.
How does it influence the black people who are 18 and vote right now?
Because this is the society that they come from. Their parents weren't allowed. Like, I came from a pretty affluent family who had a nice house in a nice area, and I never wanted for money. If your parents never had that chance, you don't have the same opportunities.
Because somehow, the moment they realized, oh, my grandparents couldn't vote, oh, I have to become evil and criminal now.
No, not at all.
There's no correlation between, what's the reason then?
If you grow up in a place like Compton where you literally have to fight every day, just like I'm not trying to excuse criminal behavior. There's no excuse for criminal behavior. All I'm saying is that if you look at groups of people as a whole, you can see the factors that push people towards criminal behavior, towards thinking that they have no other choices, so they choose these things. What I want to do is invest money and invest time into stopping these. Some of the best things you can do to prevent crime are, number one, like I was saying before, access to abortion and to contraceptives, because then women aren't having kids out of wedlock that they don't want in single mother households, so they can wait to have kids until they're ready and they're in a household with a father and a mother. You can invest in education. Right now, the way in America that the schools that we invest money in our schools is basically through property taxes. So the richer people have better schools and the poorer people have worse schools. A lot of times these schools don't have enough textbooks for each of the kids. And I just don't understand how you can say that all these kids that generally come from schools that are way worse off than all these other kids are dumber because of their race and not because they haven't had the same opportunities. Like, it just doesn't follow.
Well, you kind of excuse the fact that they are worse off than white people with the environment. The schools are worse. That is worse for them.
Yeah, generally it's true.
I don't really agree. Like,
I mean, that's not
just put everything on the environment.
No, I'm not putting. I would probably put more on environment, but it's just a fact that on the whole, white people in America are more well off. They tend to own land more. They tend to have more money. The schools, we decide how much money we put into schools due to property taxes. People that make a lot of money vote not to let people that don't make a lot of money into their schools because they don't want their money going to other people who aren't contributing the same amount as them, and therefore the people that come from low income.
They're right.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
If you pay taxes, you should be able to dictate what happens with those taxes. Why should other people be able to vote your money?
I mean, because they do. Like I said, I don't want my taxes going to a war, but like I have to pay my taxes, and like I understand why they want their money to only go to their kids. Like I get it, but what I'm saying is that in a society and on the whole, if you want to make society better as a whole, you need to invest in the people that don't have the same like income, the same resources that you have in order to bring them up. Like people always say for abortion.
That's the fallacy of leftism. You think that everyone is the same. No, it's not. It doesn't matter.
I mean, God thinks everyone is the same.
No IQ people, it doesn't matter how much you invest in women who want to become mothers. You can't change biology. You can't change genetics. Like that's the wall.
But I mean, you're just making these claims, but I don't really know what you have to back these claims up. Like we generally
biology, genetics.
But I mean, I'm pretty sure the birth rates for women have been falling like ever since we've given them more rights and more freedom. Like
yeah, they have.
Yeah, so that's changing biology. You just said we can't change it. You're saying that birth rates in women are falling while at the same time women shouldn't be doing this stuff because they're just going to have kids and therefore they can't be in the workplace. Like these are very contradictory ideas that I feel it's very hard to hold at the same time.
No, they're not really. There's a strong correlation between education, a woman's education, and birth rates. If a woman is forced to work because the husband doesn't make enough money, she will have less children. That's the reason why birth rates have been falling down.
I mean, like I said, I'm pretty sure just generally the more advanced a culture gets, the more money people get, the more stable a society gets. Birth rates just naturally fall all across the world.
It's not the people's, the society's wealth. It's the woman's education. That's the main factor that influences birth rates. Why should a man who is rich have less children? Like
why should he have more children?
The reason for it?
Why should a person who's poor have more children?
He has tons of money. He has tons of money. Why shouldn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, why do people that are poor have more children?
Because they have less education, because women have less education.
Yeah, so why don't we educate women to, like, help them...
Well, we should kind of educate them, yes, but we shouldn't necessarily force them to work full-time and not become mothers and force them to work because their men don't make enough money to provide for a family.
We don't, but we also shouldn't force the contrary. We shouldn't force them to not do that if that is what they want to do.
I think society would kind of benefit if women couldn't become like doctors or...
How is less doctors a good thing? How is less educated people? I just don't understand how less educated people is a good thing.
It's not less doctors. The women who go to university prevent men from going to universities too.
How?
There aren't infinite... because they take up space.
I mean...
there's only a certain amount of people you can send to university at a time.
Yeah,
those
kind of,
don't
maybe?
Work full time. They don't work forever. They stop at 30 or 35 because they want to have children. Why would you waste hundreds of thousands of tax dollar money on a woman who wants to become a mother and just stop working?
I mean, if we're talking about doctors, there's a lot of female doctors. I'm pretty sure female doctors, if they decide to have children and get pregnant, generally take some time off work in order to have the kid, and then generally come back to work pretty fast because they're well off enough that they can afford daycare, that they can afford...
They don't come back very fast. Like, there are articles like 60-70% of women who have children don't want to go back to work. Like, it's biology. Why would a woman who has children want to work again if the man makes enough?
Because she wants a fulfilling life in her job. She finds... I mean, there's a reason that women tend to choose, like, healthcare jobs and stuff like that, because women tend to value helping other people more than monetary income. Yeah. So, like, I can see why they would totally want to go back to helping people.
Taking care of people.
Yeah.
That's the mother instinct. They want to take care of people. If you have children, you have something to take care of. Why would you want to take care of stranger people's children or, like, strangers?
Basic empathy?
Yeah, but they have more empathy for their own children.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you don't have any empathy for other children.
Not for other children, but for strangers. If you're a doctor, like, you don't want to spend time with strangers if you have children. You want to spend time with your own.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I've had so many female doctors of all ages that I don't understand why you think that. I don't understand why you think women just all want to drop out of their careers the moment they have a kid. Like, this is usually a big...
In the past, all women who had low sex drives and didn't want to become mothers died out. They were genetic dead ends. All women who didn't want to have children just died out.
You can say that about literally anyone, not just people like women.
Yeah, of course you can.
I mean, I don't really plan on having kids. I don't really give a shit if my like genes die out, though. I don't know why that matters. I just don't see why there's value placed on that.
How old are you right now?
29.
Maybe you want to have children in like 5 years.
I mean, people always tell me I'll change my mind. I don't know. I haven't changed my mind yet. Maybe I will.
Yeah, you probably will.
No, people tell me that. I don't see it. I like traveling the world. I went to Munich a few years ago. It was like a decade ago. I loved it. It was great. But I like just traveling. I like going all over the world. Be a sperm donor and have hundreds of kids. That's funny. Sorry, I'm reading comment, but yeah, I just don't see. I don't know. I don't see why not educating women to be doctors. Because first of all, I don't think that there are men who are perfectly capable of being doctors and who have the finances to get the education to be a doctor. I don't really think it's happening that these guys just aren't being given the opportunity to be a doctor because another woman took that spot. Maybe like an individual at a university might not have been able to get into the university he wanted to because they let a woman in before him, and maybe they let the woman in before him because she was a woman and they were equal in all the other terms, but they let her in. Maybe that's happened. It probably has, but that doesn't mean that he has no other options. This guy has plenty of other options. And I don't think the number of men I don't think that there are so many spots being taken by women that there are just men out there all that can't get doctor jobs.
They are.
But like, how can you say that there would be
50% of doctors are female?
Cool, that they're 50% of people are female. That seems like it matches up pretty evenly.
Yeah, but they don't work 50% of the work. They work substantially less. They work more often only part time. The men work full time. There will be a public healthcare crisis if the number of women goes up because they only work part time. They don't work full time. They just stop after 30. They go to retirement earlier.
Are you this might seem like a non sequitur, but I promise it's not. Are you a capitalist, or like what's your like economic like view, just general?
So in my opinion, I'm very capitalistic. Yes.
Okay.
I only think that the government. So in my opinion, the government should only run 3 institutions. That's the police, the military, and the judicial system. That's the only 3 institutions the government should have power over.
Okay.
There should be a very, very small welfare state for like, in case a woman's husband dies in a car accident, maybe then she gets welfare, but generally a very small welfare state.
So why don't you think that the capitalist system won't just fix this? Like, if it's such an issue where women are taking off so much time from their jobs and they're not doing their duty as a doctor, why are in a place like America where we have where the government is not involved in our healthcare in almost any capacity?
The government is involved in universities. There's a huge bias.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about universities. I'm talking about hospitals that are privately owned. Why are they still hiring women at these rates? Why are they not only hiring men?
Because of sexual discrimination lawsuits.
I mean, in the state that I work in, or that I live in, Texas, it's very, very easy to get around this. We're in what's called a right to work state, which means that basically the person who has been denied a job or has been fired, the burden of proof is on them to prove that they were denied a job or fired because of a protected class reason, like gender, sexuality, stuff like that. So like, it really seems to me that these places wouldn't be hiring these women if...
Maybe in your state, but in other more progressive states or like Europe, there's sexual discrimination lawsuits, and if a company has less than 10% women in like normal jobs, like desk jobs, they will get.
I don't know if that's necessarily true, but at the same time, I don't know. I just don't see your argument that like. I just don't see how you think there aren't more doctors now that women are allowed to be doctors. It just seems like basic math.
In a free system, in a free capitalistic system, there shouldn't be
any
discrimination lawsuits possible, or...
In like a libertarian, yes, in like a libertarian ideal, yes, probably.
So why are there sexual discrimination laws if it's a free capitalistic state and anyone can hire anyone?
Well, because people tend to discriminate based on sex, gender, sexuality, so we've decided as a society that we're going to... Is it justified
discrimination or is it unjustified
discrimination? I think we've decided that most of the time it's not justified. Like, for instance, if you give 2 resumes that have the same exact information on them to an employer, but one has a traditionally black name and one has a traditionally white name, the traditionally white applicant, before ever meeting them or anything, will have a much higher rate of callbacks than traditionally the black-sounding name. So we should probably do whatever we can to reduce that, because we want these different perspectives and we want these different people that come from different places that are just as smart to have these different opportunities so that we can diversify our thought, so that we're not just stuck in like these old school
let's say an
rules of thought.
Employer gets an application from a man and a woman, and they both have the same ability, same intelligence, but the woman is 30 and says she doesn't have children. The employer knows in a couple of years that woman will have children, and she will get out of the working market, and she's not going to be there for 5 or 6 years. Why shouldn't he have the right to hire a man and not hire a woman? Like, why is that wrong? Why can the woman force the employer to hire her even though she has children and doesn't want to really work?
She shouldn't be forced. No, all we're saying is that they shouldn't be able to assume that she's just not going to that she's not going to like help out. Like, I don't know. I feel like instead of stopping hiring women because they might have kids, what we should do is try to enable them to work their job and have kids. Like at my current job, we give both women and men pretty equal time off for when they have kids. And there have been every woman at I know this is anecdotal, but every woman at my office there have been a couple women with multiple kids and have come back like right when they can. It seems that if you empower people to make these decisions, to have things like daycare, to have like other people help them out, to basically live in a society where we worry about the whole and the collective just as much as we worry about the individual, that it empowers women to not just give up on everything and only watch their kids for the rest of their life. Like, women generally seem to want to have fulfilling careers, but they haven't really had that opportunity because in the past they were forced to stay at home and care for kids. So if we give them the opportunity to both have kids and have their career, it just seems like it's better to have more people in the workplace.
You just assume that women self-actualize through their career. No, they don't. They self-actualize through having children, having a family. Women aren't really happy with working and making money. If the husband makes enough money, the woman will just stop working.
Well, I just don't.
Why do you assume the majority of women self-actualizes via work?
I'm not. Well, first of all, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with a woman wanting to drop out of the workforce to raise kids. I guess I feel like you're making the assumption that all women will just do that, and I don't think that. I don't see that.
You're making the assumption, or like you're projecting that on women that a career makes them happy. No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no, but it's their right to make that decision.
I don't know. So, like 80 years ago, 50 years ago, the income of a single man would be enough to provide for a family alone, because the demand for work was so low and there weren't so many people on the workforce. And since women got the right to work, or like work full-time and all that stuff, a man alone couldn't provide for a family alone. So now women are forced to work to have a family, and I don't think that's a good situation.
I don't know, the way, I guess I'm coming at it from the angle that, like, if a woman wants to work, I don't think we as a society should tell her no, like, you shouldn't have the same opportunities. She should have all the same opportunities as a man. It doesn't seem to make sense otherwise.
It's not a choice. You don't get it. It's not a choice. If a woman wants to work, she is forced to work, because then the supply or the demand for work is so high that her husband doesn't make enough. If women as a collective work, the men don't make enough money to provide alone for a family. If women don't work, their husbands make enough, but they can't work, because otherwise their husbands won't make enough money again. It's not really, you can't make it a choice, really.
Yeah.
Either way, you're forcing women who don't want to work, or you're preventing women who want to work from working. From what I can tell, the number of women who don't want to work, if their husband makes enough, is larger than the amount of women who want to work, even if their partner makes enough.
I mean, maybe.
So if you
go
from that perspective, it would be better for women not to work full-time or a lot, so the husbands can make enough to provide a loan for the family.
Maybe. Can we pause this again? There's like a bunch of shit going down in my chat that I have not been paying attention to my chat because I've been talking to you, but apparently there's shit going down, so I'm going to try to figure this out real fast. But I mean, I'm keeping you on here if you still want to talk. I can't focus on all these things at once. Holy shit, these two have been going at it. Who am I looking at? Black communities are more like proactive policing. Yes, they are. Correlated with scientific advancements only happen in the West, starting to increase in Rome. That's not name calling, that's accuracy. Damn, how far back do you guys go? Oh yeah, while I'm looking over chat, somebody in the chat asked you if you think the penalty for abortion should be the same as the penalty for murder.
In my ideal society, you mean?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between murder and like accidentally killing someone, or like irresponsibly killing someone. I don't know. I think it should be the penalty for irresponsibly killing someone, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Like,
that's a common argument.
Penalty for murder is like 20 years, and penalty for accidentally killing someone is like 6 or 8 years.
That makes sense. There's a big argument in America that like some people argue that they should be the same exact thing. So I didn't know if that was a similar thing that you would believe in. Canada's points that it took the win. Man, my chat doesn't even go back far enough. You couldn't defend a fraction of your idiotic idea. What? Dude, why are y'all fighting in the chat, dude? Come on. Me and this other guy, we disagree on this shit like really vehemently, but we're having a pretty amiable conversation, wouldn't you say, Armin?
Yes, I think the conversation was pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's going pretty well. God, apparently people in chat are like super mad at each other and like raging at each other.
Mad at me or mad at each other?
At each other. At each other. They're arguing with each other. I've never seen a major scientific breakthrough by a minority computer. Ooh, Driller. Starting with right here, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be on your side, my dude. India can barely get their own rocket propellants. Keep us waiting. Sorry, Driller, I don't think I'm going to be on your side for this, for the majority of the time. Ancient Greek and Rome, Chinese history. Yeah, I'm starting to not close to China to the quiet limit. Easily type holy shit, they're still going? Okay, trying to engage you in good faith. Okay, child molester. Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like Driller. I don't think I really like what you're doing in here. Briefly, like I said. Advanced child molester go. Yeah. New account, you're clearly arguing in bad faith. Slabs over your server logs. Alright, cool. Yeah, I'm trying to make him on. Don't listen to this child. Alright. Yeah, I didn't really dirty crackhead. Yeah, from what I was watching, I had a really hard time keeping up with it because it was a lot of talking. But seeing this Driller guy just first, I mean, I don't like anybody like calling names in general, but I don't know. I'm not a fan of the general shit he was saying. Oh wait, what? No, I banned the wrong guy. What? No, I banned the wrong guy. No, I didn't mean to ban him. How do I unban? Unban. There you go. God damn. Whoops, I'm sorry. Driller, no. You were the one I was trying to ban. There you go. God. Sorry, I didn't mean to ban you. I'm sorry, Batman. I was trying to ban Driller, and I accidentally banned you. I clicked ban, and then I saw Driller go, thank you. I go, what? I thought I just banned you. And then I look up, and it goes, you've banned Excessive Madman. I was like, no, that's not what I meant to do. I didn't mean to ban him. My bad, Madman. My bad for that little ban there. Didn't mean to do that. Yeah, no, that Driller guy seemed like kind of a... Yeah, no, that wasn't... He was... Yeah, no, sorry, I'm not dealing with that. I should have just timed him out, honestly, but I don't want to deal with it. From what y'all were saying, if he's like a new account and stuff, he seems just like a troll that's trying to troll, so no thanks. Yeah, Armin, anyways, where were we? Do you still have anything you want to talk about? Like, I'm just chilling, man, so if you keep wanting to talk, I'm down to talk some more. I don't know what time it is over there. It's probably really early, huh?
Are you reading, like, articles and stuff, or what are you doing?
No, I was just been talking to you. Don't cry now. Okay, this Driller guy's threatening to get me banned from Twitch. I don't know why. Yeah, same here. Excessive Madman. He's DMing me too. I
think we talked about everything, right?
I think so. Unless there's anything else you want to talk about, maybe we can save that for another time. If you want to have a chat another time.
Well, if you continue streaming or want to read some articles, I don't know. I could stay in, but.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like 4 a.m. over there. It's only almost midnight.
Yeah, it's like in 10 minutes it's midnight.
Okay, cool. I thought it was keeping you up super, super late.
No.
I actually have like a pretty good block. Yeah, oh no, I already blocked him. Don't worry. Not you. This other guy. But yeah, I wonder what else we could talk about right now. Unless you want to keep talking about something that we have been. Or did you say you want to look up articles? Is that what you were saying?
No, I was asking if you are reading articles.
Oh, I was looking up stuff while we were talking on the stream. If you're seeing what I'm doing on the stream, I was just looking up stuff while we were talking and like seeing what that was. Because I was just trying to like find stuff to back up what I was saying while we were talking. But yeah. Why am I going to Twitter? What's wrong with me?
Yeah, what is your opinion on transsexuals?
By transsexual, do you mean just transgender in general?
No, transsexual, like the operation with changing genitals and stuff.
Uh, so I generally believe that anybody should be able to do with their body what they want, hence bodily autonomy. The only so I'm a little bit uncomfortable talking about this just because generally when it comes to transgender issues, I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me, and it tends to be there tends to be a lot of not good faith actors that try to get people like me, or I consider myself a good faith actor, that try to pull me into these conversations and agree with them on things so that they can use the things that I do agree with them for bad faith arguments. So when it comes to things like people getting surgery to like change their sex, what I would say is that I don't tend to have a problem with it because I generally believe people can do what they want. But I will say that I don't think there's a very heavy correlation with lowered suicide rate with pre and post op, and I would want to make sure that uh, that would be the biggest argument against it. And at the same time, generally, whenever people want to remove parts of their body, that's not a good thing. But in this case, it tends to be different. So I don't really know. I'm not really comfortable making
So
like
you have seen the suicide rate increase from like 1% to 42%, right? You saw that
from what I understand, the suicide rate is pretty steady between people who are pre and post op, and it doesn't fall in the way you would expect it to. I could be wrong about that, though. I could be wrong. Let me look it up.
No, it's really very higher post operation. I can explain it if you want to.
I'm looking at Heritage Foundation. This is a fucking
Yeah, so the most articles say basically transsexuals have a 43% suicide attempt rate after operation, I think.
conservative. Nope, not.
And that's worse than any kind of mental illness or depression. Like, it's almost 1.5, which is unbelievably high. So let me explain to you why that probably is. So what you're basically doing is you're removing your own genitals and you're replacing them with like second class genitals, basically. So what happens most of the time is you lose 80% of the feeling in your genitals, which means that sex is basically not fun anymore. It's like it's nothing great. What also happens is that your dating pool, the amount of people you can date, shrinks from 50% of the population to less than 1% of the population, because everyone says that they like transsexuals, but nobody actually dates transsexuals who isn't transsexuals themselves.
That's not true, but it's true that it's a very
So-
small group of people. Yes.
Yeah,
To say nobody
they
does,
are-
though,
so-
isn't true.
So the dating pool and social circle basically shrinks to a very slim amount of people.
Sure.
So they get more socially isolated. They don't have fun with sex and stuff anymore. They won't have children most likely, because the odds of finding another one who is transsexual and is fertile is also low. And yeah, then there is the mental illness part, because they think that they are someone who they are not, which I think is not normal.
All right, so I'm happy to talk about this for a little while, but like I said, I generally try not to talk about this too much because it seems like even good faith discourse seems to do more damage than good when it comes to stuff like this, because it generally doesn't affect people's day-to-day life that aren't trans, but it tends to heavily affect people's day-to-day life that are trans. But what I will say in general is that, again, man, I don't know. You could be 100% right about this. I don't know. But from my viewpoint, what I generally think is, if somebody is going so far as to completely change their body, they probably have. If somebody has gone to that point and the suicide rates are only increasing, I would say that might have just as much to do with society's treatment of trans people as it does pure mental state. I think because people like to say, oh, being transgender is a mental illness. I don't necessarily agree with that, but if I did take that at face value and agree that it was a mental illness, it seems to me that the best treatment for it would be to accept them into society as you would any cis person.
I don't think so. Do you think society should accept people who are attracted to children?
No, children aren't trans people. Their children aren't full-grown adults that we've decided as a society are capable of making the best decision for themselves. That's why we give parents the right to control. We give parents the right to control their children and make decisions about them, like circumcision, which is not a good one, but we still give parents the right to make those decisions. because we understand the fact that children they don't understand consent in the same way adults do, and they're not able to make decisions in the same way that adults do. It's the same with dogs, it's the same with animals, it's the same with anything that's not a consenting adult.
Anyways, I don't think self-mutilating your body to the extent that you don't have fun having sex anymore and your dating pool shrinks to such a low amount is like, it's normal. I don't think it's healthy, I don't think it's good. I'm pretty sure it's like a mental illness.
You might be right. What I'm curious though is like, but see, this is the problem I have, is that it seems like you're either jumping to conclusions off of just a little bit of evidence, or it seems like that you have a preconceived notion in your mind that you're trying to find evidence to support. Because first of all, like, what percentage of pre-op versus post-op? Like, I don't even know how many transgender people get operations. And when you say pre-op versus post-op, does that only mean genital reassignment? Does that only mean vagina to penis or penis to vagina? Because there's a lot of female to trans men that get breast reductions and they get top surgery but not bottom.
The medical term is probably hormones and genitals. From my perspective, I would say only the genitals, because that's when the bad stuff happens.
So would you...
Hormones aren't that huge.
Sorry, you cut out. Hormones aren't that what?
As hormones don't have such a giant effect as like changing your genitals.
But I guess. Well, first of all, we needed to nail down when you say gender reassign, like when you say these surgeries, because like I know female to male transgender people who have had top surgery, which is basically just a breast reduction.
Well,
would you consider that?
That's not that heavy, because you're just removing something and not replacing it with something else. But if you remove your penis or you remove your vagina and replace it with something else, it would be less sensitive. It would be heavily damaged. It won't be as good as the original, and that's why sex isn't fun after that.
Well, and this is probably just getting into semantics, but like sexual reassignment surgery, they don't cut off your dick and replace it with a vagina, right? Like they.
Yeah, I have seen those operations.
Yeah,
they take the dick and make a pseudo vagina out of it.
Yeah, that's a.
They use the flesh of the penis.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. Man, I'm not educated enough on this to make really like definitive statements. All I would say is that surgery may not be the best solution to helping transgender individuals. What seems like the best thing we can do that helps transgender individuals is just accept them as at the gender they say they are in society.
I wouldn't say that. So in my opinion, the reason why people think that they are something that they are not is because they are insecure in their identity.
That probably has a part to do with it.
I don't like myself as a boy, I don't like myself as a girl, I want to be something else. And the main reason at the core is insecurity. I think that if we support especially young people in their identities and in the stuff they want to achieve in life in general, they will be more secure in who they are, and then they won't try to be something that they're not.
Yeah, but do you understand or do you believe in the difference between sex and gender, or do you believe sex and gender are completely synonymous?
I don't really. I have never accepted gender. I only separate in sex, like biological.
So how do you? I guess I just like, if that was the case, then like, do you know who Blair White is?
No.
I thought you might know who she is, because she's a transgender woman who's pretty right wing. She's pretty far right wing. But people like Ben Shapiro. Are you familiar with Ben Shapiro?
Yes.
He doesn't like to use pronouns that transgender people prefer. He'll call transgender women he and she or he and sir and stuff. I guess it's just like, I don't. If you were going to take somebody like Blair White, who looks exactly like a woman but she's biologically a man, you wouldn't go, if you're trying to find her at a restaurant, you wouldn't go to the maitre d' and say like, hey, I'm looking for a 5'8" man with long hair and he'll be sitting, like, if you're just trying to be like just purely utilitarian, like, it doesn't make sense to deny their, especially because a man is not a man. A man doesn't stop being a biological man. What I'm trying to say is a man doesn't stop being a biological man just because they decide to start presenting as a woman. So like, if they have a penis and balls just because they start trying to be a woman, but that doesn't mean that we can't respect their gender as a woman. And in a purely utilitarian way too, it just makes more sense to refer to them as the gender they prefer to. And this is not completely taking the empathy out of it. This is just being purely utilitarian about it.
if you look at it from the perspective everyone can be whoever they want, then maybe yes. But what I'm saying is that these individuals would be happier in life if they wouldn't act like something that they are not, and instead pursue something else like a family or a meaningful life, and not
But instead
be a
of
woman.
saying they would be happier, instead of saying this person would be happier if they stopped pretending to be something that they're not, I could say they would be happier if society would accept them for what they are and stop trying to tell them that they're something that they're not.
Yeah, I don't think that would work.
I guess you just really don't see a difference between sex and gender, though.
Like instead of these people taking responsibility for their own issues and problems in their mind, they just force everyone to accept them, right? Like,
No, but what if
I'm not mad, I'm not problematic, I'm not damaged, you have to accept me like I am and act like I'm not damaged. Like, I don't see it from that.
I mean, I think you would have to be the one to demonstrate they are damaged. Like, if we're going to talk about like people that are like, oh, it's transphobic to not date trans people, like, then I would agree they're saying some dumb stuff. But that's not what most trans people are saying. They're just generally saying, I wish I am a woman, I want to present as a woman, I want to live as a woman, and I want society to see me as a woman, and not have people call me out and say like, oh, you're a man. And it seems that they have the best outcomes in places where they are accepted in this way. So I just don't really see like, I don't see who it hurts, and I don't see like why we shouldn't, until it's proven otherwise, kind of just take them at face value, especially since there's so many people that are coming from
it has
individual.
been kind of proven, right? If you look at the suicide rates, at the mental instability of these people, like if someone insulted you on the internet, would you be depressed or start crying? Probably not. If a trans person is so easily insulted and mad at something that people call them, how is it not a bad thing? How is it not a mental?
But like, I also haven't been ridiculed my whole life because of who I am and told that who I am on the inside is an illegitimate thing, and I haven't been reminded daily that I'm not that society doesn't see me the same way I see me. Like, as a straight white dude, like, well, technically half Latino, but I'll go with white. Like,
so let's say you changed your gender identity to werewolf, right? You're a wolf now, and you start ridiculing other people for not calling you a werewolf. Would you get mad at that? Would you start be depressed about people not calling you a werewolf?
No, because, oh my god, this is... Take care, Madman. Sorry. One sec, gotta address chat. Take care, Madman. Appreciate you here. Sorry about all that shit that happened earlier. I'm trying to keep an eye on chat, but it's hard to do that while I'm having this conversation. Back to the werewolf thing. There's, in society, we already accept the fact that there are men and women, male and female. We have wanted to say that they're very closely related, but now we have started realizing that sex and gender aren't as binary and as one-to-one as we thought they were. Just saying that somebody's a werewolf, I don't know, on a personal level, if it was a very close friend of mine and they said, hey, I'm a werewolf, I want you to start referring me, I'd probably do it if it legitimately made him feel better. But in this case, it seems like these people would be bad faith actors and wouldn't be legit. Like, I know there are such things as otherkin, but I think there's a vast difference between saying, I feel like those people over there, like, I relate more to those people, than saying, I am something that is objectively not me, that doesn't exist in the real world, and that I have no examples of to go off of. You know what I mean? Like,
I kind of agree. I kind of disagree.
I got you. Yeah.
So, from your perspective, the best thing to do with transsexuals is to just accept them and play into their games. I'm gonna act like a 6'2" muscular human is a man, and that will help you.
No.
My perspective is,
sorry,
you should stop them from transitioning and stop them from operating their genitals away, and instead tell them it's okay how you are. You don't need to act like something you're not. That's my perspective.
I just feel like the burden of proof is kind of on you to prove that they are something that they're not. And I guess my general, when it comes to like transgender issues today, my general idea or my general frame of reference is that I try not to be too critical, because I accept the fact that trans people exist. I accept the fact that trans people I basically accept what the general scientific consensus and what trans people say is generally true until they start getting into some really weird stuff. But I want us to get to a point, like, I am very not comfortable talking about a lot of this stuff just because I don't know how it really benefits the trans people in general. I want to get to a point where trans people are so accepted that having these difficult conversations don't necessarily hurt a trans person. You know what? I don't know if that makes sense. I want them to be so accepted that we can talk about these difficult things and not have it used by bad faith actors.
You kind of realize that trans people are kind of insecure about the topic, right? That's why there's...
Yeah, no, and I want to get to a point where they don't feel insecure.
Why are they insecure about it?
Because there is no society, at least in the Western world, or as far as I know, other than maybe some like Native American societies, that accept anything other than the binary male and female gender. And if there's people that are outside that spectrum, they don't feel accepted in a society that treats them like they're not accepted.
So individuals have to feel accepted to be secure.
I mean, not necessarily, but generally, like, if I dropped you off in the middle of like Syria, you would probably be like uncomfortable because you probably wouldn't be accepted. I said Syria because that's a war zone. I shouldn't say a war zone, but just generally, if I dropped you in the middle of like a completely different culture, like let's say I dropped you somewhere that didn't like Germans, like you probably wouldn't feel very comfortable there or secure or accepted.
I wouldn't start crying or being depressed. I would just deal with the situation.
But what if your entire life, like, I just feel like you're not having a lot of empathy here, man. I feel like you're trying to view it from like a point of view that like, I just feel like it's different if you've been told your entire life that you're not who you are, that there are literally people that are out there working to try and prevent you from being who you want to be.
So there are people, there are actual children who have male brains, who are really men, but they have female genitals. In those cases, alright, I accept it. There are really rare cases where children as young of age 5 act completely different for their gender. What I don't accept is if someone who's 25 and insecure and depressed and doesn't have friends thinks that he somehow becomes a better person if he transitions the gender. If somehow his life will get better if he just changes his gender.
I don't think that happens. Like, this is also anecdotal, but from your anecdote, I have one that's like, I don't think people just change gender because it's convenient. Like, I have a friend who transitioned in their mid-20s or so, but it was because because we grew up in a very Christian area, and she grew up in a very Christian household whose parents are now, well, at least from what I understand, her parents are very accepting now, but back in the day they weren't accepting at all. Being transgender wasn't really a thing. We went to a private Christian school where they told us daily that being gay or being anything that's outside the norm is wrong and bad and you shouldn't do it. And basically when you have everyone around you, like you were talking about women in hijabs, like how they can't remove the hijab because of social pressure, especially in places like here where it's like a religious Christian area. If you feel like you're transgender, you can't, even if you know it from a young age, you can't voice those concerns, and you can't transition as a young person because your family will disown you. There's a very high percentage of transgender people that are homeless because they're immediately kicked out of the house and disowned by their family. So they can't, just for self-preservation. And once they're finally self-reliant, then they can come out and be like, hey, by the way, I've always been trans. I just couldn't come out because I had to look out for myself. I had to look out for my safety first. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, kinda.
I mean, maybe
I don't think that like suddenly because it was legal to be transsexual, they just become transsexual. No, I rather think of it as like
it's not legal. It's
or
like imagine, I don't know. Imagine if, I don't know what, there's something that you believe or that's like really close to you, but let's say that, I don't know what your hair color is, but let's say that you're blonde. Let's say that from a really young age, I don't know, man. I don't know the right thing to do. Basically, when you're told, if you know that if you come out with who you really are, everyone that you know and love will disown you and kick you out to the street, it makes more sense to just hide that fact until you're self-reliant.
Right, yeah. I get that, but that thing you just talk about, everyone in your social circle will disown you. That always happens. You can't prevent that. If you say like, I'm not secure in my own gender identity, mm-hmm. people will respect you less. You can't prevent that. If you say I don't like myself, I want to be someone else, people will always respect you less, and you can't change that. No matter how much you change or manipulate society, it will always happen.
Mm-hmm. But like, well, what I'm saying is, you're saying it's like not legitimate if they do it later in life, and I'm saying there are plenty of reasons why you wouldn't do that early in life.
Why?
Because I just laid them all out. Like, if you're a 14-year-old kid and you know that you're transgender, but you have to live in a household that's very religious and will kick you out to the curb if you come out as transgender, you're gonna hide it because you want food, you want to live. Like, you have to live your life.
I mean, like, why wouldn't he then do it at 14 or like 10 when he didn't know that it was illegal to be gay? Why didn't he do it earlier? Why doesn't he behave like a normal girl or man?
You weren't raised in a religious household, I'm assuming, right?
No.
No? I wasn't raised in that religious of a household, but I went to private religious schools growing up, and there is no, they beat it to you from the very beginning. They make you conform. If a young boy starts playing with Barbies or wants to try on a dress, parents a lot of times will say, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's a girl thing. You don't do that. No. And there are people that will even punish their kids for doing that. So, like, I just feel like you just don't I feel like you not only do you not understand what a lot of people are going through, you don't accept the fact that you won't understand. Like, I try to accept the fact that I don't know where people are coming from a lot of the time, and that everybody's situation is probably infinitely more complex than I give it credit for. And it just really seems like you're trying to reduce this to really like binary things, and that's not really how it works. Yeah, okay, and Jeff, sorry. Lauren Southern, I can't stand Lauren Southern. She does whatever she can to try and point out the biggest flaws in the system and then paint them as though it's this giant societal issue. I don't really see, even if she did, like, yeah, I did see that she was telling everyone to call her a man because she did that. But even if she did, like, I don't see what the problem is with assuming that people are generally changing gender for a good reason, and that they're not bad faith actors. It's kind of like in general when it comes to things like food stamps. People say we can't do food stamps because some people will take advantage of it. I would rather give the people that need food stamps the food stamps and accidentally give the people that don't need it the food stamps, rather than not give anybody food stamps because some people might try and take advantage of the system. I just don't really see what like the benefits are for a lot of these people. But yeah, Armin, sorry, I kind of started talking to chat there again. Somebody in chat has a suggestion for you if you want to talk more about transgender stuff too, which I'm happy to. I'm probably not going to take two very hardline stances on this stuff just because.
What does he say?
By the way, Armin, if you want to debate transgender issues, Osmal, if you go to my stream, I have the chat logs up. You should be able to see it. He gave a name. It's OZMALNTHE Dark. I have a lot of stuff up. But yeah, she's a trans woman who's often willing to talk about these things. All right, cool. Reminds me of the Indian guy who went to prestigious college as a black man. His sister was a pop singer. I think it was in the news. Yeah, there's always going to be people that try to push the system and try to show the flaws. I just generally think that the flaws in systems like respecting people's gender identity, there aren't really many downsides. And there are, first of all, there aren't going to be many people that try to take advantage of it. Second of all, I don't really know what the downsides are, but I do know what the downsides are for telling trans people that they don't exist or not giving them rights. There's way worse downsides to that. So I don't know. I'm trying to look for a purely what's best for the most people.
So what was the name of the woman again?
Here, I'll link it in chat or in Discord.
I'm not really sure if there are people who are so secure about their gender identity or transsexual that
apparently
you would really have a serious debate about that.
Transgender woman who's willing to talk about these things, apparently.
On Twitch.
Did you get the thing in Discord, the name?
Yeah,
I believe she's a Twitch streamer. Yeah. But I mean, okay, just for the purely utilitarian, let's just talk about what's the most useful. Even if you don't believe, if you think this is a man, but this man dresses up in makeup and long hair, talks with kind of the affection with the S's, talks feminine, everything, wouldn't you just say it's more useful as a society for us to be yeah, sure, you're a woman, oh, I'm going to go visit that woman over there, instead of just saying oh yeah, I'm gonna go visit. You know that man carrying the purse? I need to find a man. Will you help me find? Oh, who am I looking for? It's about a 5'8" man. Like, I don't know, just from a purely utilitarian.
So, if the transsexual person is so insecure and at that point that they would just break down and have a depression if they were called a man, actually, it probably would be better for everyone in the room to act like he's an actual woman, because then he wouldn't be insecure.
I feel like you're really reducing this to like, oh, they're just insecure about it. Like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, imagine if your whole life people were like, oh, you're not German, or if everyone just like tried to call you a Nazi all the time, and if you were like, I'm not a Nazi, and everyone's like, oh right, sure, you're not a Nazi. Like,
yeah, I don't start crying or getting mad if
but
someone.
You haven't had to deal with that.
People do.
You haven't had to deal with that from literally everyone, from literally the moment you like existed. Like, we are just now getting to a point where
it's not the moment you exist, it's maybe after puberty, after they found out about that stuff.
But still, this is also like, I don't know, man. I think I'm just gonna have a hard time getting you to like empathize with them. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that. Like, I tend to empathize with them. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I got made fun of a lot in high school, so I kind of empathize with people that feel like they're not accepted. That, like, I don't know.
I'm not saying that we should completely disown them. I'm saying that we should create an environment where they can be secure in their gender they were born with. Like the reason people transitionate is because they're insecure about the gender they are. I'm not a good boy, I'm not a good girl, I'm not an attractive girl or boy, I want to be something else. I want to be judged by my beauty, or I want to be judged by my income, so I'm going to change genders. I don't think that that's the solution. I think that the solution is to give them the social help they need to be successful in their own biological gender identity.
I don't think your characterization of why they quote unquote decide to be transgender, because I don't think it's a decision. So I don't think your characterization of like the process of going through with publicly making the transition, I don't know if that's true. Like, you're probably going to have to talk to a trans person to like really get their
what
perspective.
Reasons do you think there are? It can't be biological reasons, because then
why can't it?
From puberty on. Because then they would, before puberty, behave like that.
A lot of them
but
do.
They don't know that it's bad.
A lot of them do.
In that case, I'm fine with that, but they usually don't. They don't act like.
But why?
From
why? I don't know. Like, their environment is going to affect the way that they do things, and like if you're
no. So
yes,
there are biological differences between men and women, especially girls and boys.
Yeah.
Boys tend to play with cars and stuff, and girls tend to play with dolls. If a child, a young boy, only has interest in dolls and all that stuff, and only is friends with the girls, then maybe there are some biological differences between that boy and other boys. And I see why he would then be transsexual, because from his own mind, without any influence, he wanted to be the other gender and behaves like it. So in that case, I would say yes. If someone hears from the media or the college, oh, you can be transsexual, you can be a girl, and then they start to do that because of that, that's not natural. That's a sign of insecurity, I think.
These are some really big assumptions that I don't think you're really qualified to be making, though. Like, to just like assume that it's because like they feel bad. Like, I don't know. I think that they. I don't know. Being
transsexual means rejecting your own gender, your own identity, and becoming something completely else.
I mean, if you just don't, if you're not going to accept that gender and sex are two things or are on a spectrum, then I don't like. If you're, because like with me, my gender and my sex are very, very, very closely knit. Like, I don't see a difference between being a man biologically and being a man gender wise. So like, I get that perspective, but from what I hear from all these other people is they don't have that same connection that I do, and all I can do is take them at face value until proven otherwise. And since so many unique people from so many unique backgrounds, from so many different places who have never met each other and have done so many different things, are coming to the same conclusions about this stuff, it's a pretty reasonable thing to assume they're probably telling the truth about their experiences. Jeff, it has a disproportionate amount of interest considering it's 2% of the population. Yeah, but 0.2% of the population is still 6 million plus people. And it doesn't matter what small amount of population they are. If they are being denied rights that are owed to them, we still need to do whatever we can to give it to them. I tend to believe that they are denied rights that are owed to them. There are people that disagree with me, but it doesn't matter how small the population is. It's still millions of people. They still deserve the same amount of rights as everybody else.
What rights are they denied?
In the United States, they can't join the military. Oftentimes, they're not given the same opportunity to jobs because of their transgender. The same thing that, anything, man, they're denied access to a lot of different places because of being transgender.
Well, that kind of makes sense. The standard for
Why?
military is you need testosterone and a
Why?
body that went to male puberty, because it's the military. We need people to defend our country. It's not school. It's not some circus. It's defending your country with power. You can't let anyone in there. You only need strong, competent men. You can't let women in there because they won't be able to do the job. You need the most competent people. Transsexuals aren't the most competent people. They either are missing male puberty or they're missing testosterone. If you go by the rule that you only need the most competent and strong people in the military, you can't let transgenders in there.
Okay,
I don't want transgenders to defend my family or my country. I don't want that.
I'm going to ask a question. I'm being legitimate. I'm not trying to be condescending. You realize that not every job in the military is like a combat job, right? Like there are people there are people that are secretaries. There are people who have like desk jobs. They're like,
I wouldn't really consider that military.
It is. There are people that work for the Air Force that are engineers, and in America right now. Yeah, they're still in the military.
From my perspective, military is like.
Okay, that's not how the world uses that term, though, and that's not how in the United States.
That's how I use the term.
That's not how everyone else uses it. Like if you say that you want to ban transgender people from active duty combat scenarios, I still don't necessarily agree. I think you would have to explain. You would have to make the case for that. But I think you would have a better case than saying.
I explained it.
Yeah.
We need the most competent people to defend our country. Transsexual are missing either testosterone or male puberty. They are not the most competent.
We have women in combat positions, like biological women.
There shouldn't be. There are like 4% of women can meet the male standard, and those women will almost always get pregnant before war. So there's no.
You don't. That's such a huge assumption. All right, I will be with you if you like. I will be with you if you say that women in combat positions should have to be held to the same standards as men. Sure, I will agree with you there. But to just go ahead and say that they're just going to get pregnant beforehand anyways, that's such a ridiculous claim. You don't have any backing for that. Like.
Why? How is that not obvious? Nobody wants to die in war. Why would somebody not use the opportunity to not fight in war?
Why did this woman, this alleged hypothetical woman who is in a combat scenario, why would she sign up for a combat position, go through training to be in a combat position, train her body, leave her family, do everything for a combat position, pass all of the requirements that she needs to, completely outclassing any of her peers as females, and then right before she's about to finally go and do the job that she's been training for, she decides, oh, by the way, it's dangerous. Like, did somebody just come up to her last second and be like, hey, by the way, you could die out there? And then she's like, what? And then she just like doesn't want to do it.
Survival instinct told her, don't go to war, you will die.
Have you ever seen like? Why is it only women though? Like guys, why don't guys have that? Have you ever seen?
They can get pregnant. Pregnant women can't be forced to go to war.
But like, I don't understand why you think that women are just going to get pregnant to get out of it after they've gone through all of these.
Nobody wants to go to war. Men go to war because they're forced at gunpoint. They will be court-martialed and will be executed.
Yeah, but there are also. Yes, you're right, but at the same time, I don't know if you've seen like there are a lot of guys that. A big reason that a lot of soldiers who encountered combat can't reintegrate into life here is because they've gotten so used to the adrenaline highs and lows that they crave combat. There are people that crave combat and want to get back out into it. Like, generally, yes, you're right. But no, there are people that are not scared of combat. There are people that want to go and do it. Maybe once they actually experience it, they'll change their mind. Yeah, typically men. That doesn't mean women can't want to do it either. Have you seen this lady who like, oh my God, she's a badass. She like helps poach. U.S. Army woman hunts
that's
poachers.
Not a life-threatening job. Like
hunting poachers.
Women don't want to die. They don't want to
go
to situations where they can. What?
I said neither do guys, but they do it because they want to. A lot of people want to test themselves. They want to put themselves through the hardest situations they can to see what they can do.
That's usually only men. Women don't have that kind of.
Yeah. So
kind of instinct.
so why would we ban any woman that does? Because that means that she's a tiny percent of her gender, and if she's able to pass all the same tests and to where she is just as capable as her male counterparts, why should we tell her no? Because maybe she might get pregnant.
Because people usually try to avoid going to war.
I don't think that's
and executing people who don't want.
Yeah, but that's not a normal.
She would most likely get pregnant.
Okay, you're just honestly, dude, like you're just making all these assumptions and you're not really backing them up. Like, I don't really know how you can say that.
It's completely logical. You don't want to go to war because you're scared of dying. Therefore, a woman will try to avoid going to war.
But you're completely like, why? If she's scared of dying and doesn't want to go to war, why did she sign up for a combat position in the military in the first place?
Because of the environment, everyone encourages her to go to the military.
I don't know.
Because of money or other factors.
Well, the United States military is the biggest jobs program they provide, so.
Yeah, women usually work for the government.
These are really big leaps, and you're also just not taking into account that women and transgender individuals could even if they, let's assume that they're not fit for combat, which I'm not comfortable with admitting, they could still have other jobs that are non-combat jobs. They could have leadership positions, they could have jobs as engineers, they could have jobs as scientists, they could have jobs as doctors. They can do all of these things that don't need to be super big and buff and go to battle for.
If they have children, maybe, yeah.
But you're just assuming they're all just having kids. There are so many military women that don't have kids in the military that come out and decide to start a family once they're done.
Yeah, when are they done? Before 35, because that's the fertility window.
I mean, women have children afterwards?
Military, you work for 5 or 10 years and then you're out. Why would you give a woman a leading role if she only wants to work 5 or 10 years?
I mean, in the American military, you're only...
You know these men in films who always have those long beards, like 50 rewards on their chest? Those are men who work their entire lives. Women will only work 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, well, maybe
before having children.
Yeah, maybe in general, women
give them leading roles.
Well, I mean, what's wrong with women only taking short-term roles in the military, though? I know a lot of guys.
Nothing wrong.
Most guys in the military only do one tour. They do a 4-year tour. They spend 4 years in the military, and then they're done. And when most people are entering the military in America from ages like 18 to 22, that means they're done by age 26. So even with this weird fertility thing that you like to talk about so much, they're still leaving the military at age 26 after having combat positions, potentially. So I don't know why we would ban all women or all transgender just because the majority might not be able to make it in. Why not just hold them to the same standards as everyone else? And if they pass, then let them in. Do it. Who cares?
Like, even if they somehow are able to fit the male standard, the differences in hormones and testosterone will still have an effect on them. Also,
maybe. I don't know, maybe.
There's a huge amount of women who are left infertile after serving in the military for long times. And I don't want women to become infertile because of the military.
I mean, guys get their dick shot off too. Like, sounds like the male, what's it called?
That's not really a reason. Like, women will get infertile because they carry a ton of stuff because of the cortisol, because of stress, and comparing that to being shot.
I just don't understand why, like, I don't know. It's weird for me that, like, you would ban an individual from a job that they're qualified for in order to help the country and keep the country safer just because her peers might not be the same.
So by that logic, we should outlaw it and make it illegal to get pregnant to avoid being drafted into war, right?
I don't like the draft period, so I would just want to make the draft illegal.
So let's say a woman works for 15 years in the military and there's a war. She can't get pregnant and has to fight in the war, just like the men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would be fine with that.
All I'm saying is that if they can pass the same tests that are given to the average man, if they can pass all the tests, I don't see why we shouldn't. That includes psychological tests. That includes physical tests.
They don't get any special treatment.
No, I don't.
Special treatment.
No.
You have to go to war. You can't get pregnant. No shit.
Well, okay. The only issues that I have with that is that there are incredibly high rates of sexual assault and rape in the military. So
yeah, exactly.
So you don't want to punish a woman that was assaulted any farther than that. You want to help her out, but that's a problem with any sort of.
What would you do then? Only make female-only teams?
No, I mean that does exist though. The Kurds have like female-only teams. The Soviets used female-only bomber squads. The Finns used female-only sniper groups. Like, it does happen. I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying it's a thing.
To females in war, right? They don't get killed. They become rape slaves.
Yeah, a lot of times, which is why they have even more. That's why, like, these Kurdish women, That's why they're fighting. That's why they're going into combat, is because ISIS comes through, and regardless of whether or not they're fighting, they still take them and keep them as sex slaves. So they've decided, fuck this, we're going to train ourselves to be some of the most badass elite fighting forces. And it's a big middle finger to ISIS when they die, because according to ISIS beliefs, they don't go to heaven if they're killed by a woman. So it's like a double middle finger. Yeah, good, fuck them. But I don't know, man. I've seen plenty of examples of, especially with the advent of things like guns, like to where it equalizes force. It seems that women can be, if they want to be, just as capable as men. Maybe not as physically strong, so maybe we would stop them from being in situations where, like, the only argument that I can see against women fighting is that they're not physically strong enough. So, like, if one of the people goes down, they're not strong enough to pull them away or whatever, right? That's the only real argument I can see.
It's not just physical. Like, do you know the reason why women work less than men?
In general, across the world,
Yes,
or in the
in
United
general.
States, they probably value personal time more than they value.
No, that's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. That's progressive propaganda. The way hormones in men and women work are completely different. Testosterone basically cancels out the stress hormone cortisol, so men can work longer times and work harder. That's the reason why almost all pilots are male.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why men work more is because they want to provide financially for their families, and because they can. They can work 8 to 10 hours per day.
Mm-hmm.
Women can't. There's a biological barrier. Women can't.
I work with a lot of women that work 8 to 10 hours a day.
In what job?
I mean, desk job.
Yeah, desk job. That's an easy job. Not
It
programming.
can still be stressful.
No, that's not that stressful.
I mean, if you're going to look for me to say that, like, it's pure sexism and that's why women aren't in programming, like, no, I'm not going to say that. I think generally women make decisions.
The way men and women process stress and pressure is completely different.
Yeah, but saying because on average women may not. Okay, first of all, I don't even necessarily agree. But if I did agree, even saying that on average, because women might not be able to handle these things as much as men, that doesn't mean that we prevent the ones that can from doing it. And I don't agree with
sure.
I don't agree with saying that they can't handle it
But-
to begin with. But
Like saying women value that more. No, why would they value it more? Because of biology? Are you saying there's a biological difference?
to value what? I'm sorry.
Why do women value free time more? Is there a biological difference? Is that
Maybe, yeah, there might be. On the whole, for sure. That doesn't mean that there are individuals that aren't outside that, like, dynamic, though. That want to go against the dynamic, like.
So the only reason is because they value free time more. There's nothing else.
No, I'm just using that as an example for, like, why it might be. Because like you were saying, it tends to be women tend to go into, like, healthcare jobs, into jobs where they're actively, like, teaching jobs where they're actively working with people one-on-one. Because women tend to value that.
Part-time.
Yeah. I don't know enough about that to dispute that. But I would say that there may be a biological reason for that. It may be a cultural thing. It may be a combination of the two. Honestly, usually it's a combination of a whole bunch of crazy different factors that we don't even think of. It just seems very reductionist to say that, oh, I know why, it's because of this. And then just be like, well, what else could it be?
It's not that hard to see. If you compare height, if you compare achievement, if you compare money made, if you compare hierarchies, most achievements in history in any field, it's almost always men, because men put in the time, because they process stress and pressure differently.
Well, women were also never given the same opportunities that men were until recently.
In the last 100 years they were. And
The last
Marie Curie
50,
is the perfect-
maybe.
No, it's 100. Marie Curie won 1903 the Nobel Prize.
Well, I mean, okay. If by last 100 we mean literally the last 100 since, like, 1919, then maybe I could start agreeing with you, because 1912 women didn't even have the right to vote, so.
Well, Marie Curie won the Nobel Prize. How did you
Yeah.
do it?
No, I'm not saying that women were just completely, like, they didn't have the opportunities. I'm just saying they didn't have the same opportunities that men did. And just because they didn't have the same opportunities, just because one woman won a Nobel Prize, doesn't mean that women on the whole have the
men
same.
hate women so
No,
much.
no, not at all.
No, I mean, from your perspective, a husband would deny his wife books and knowledge just because she's a woman. No, men love the woman. If women had the interest to study and learn stuff, the husbands would have just taught them that stuff. It's because they don't have the interest to do it.
I'm not saying men hate them or, like.
No, but I mean, why would men collectively hate women so much that they would prevent them from getting knowledge? If a wife asks her husband, "Can you teach me that? Can you give me that book?" the husband does it. Men don't hate their woman.
No, I don't-
Women don't have that interest in that kind of stuff. Because if you want to work, if you want to achieve something, it's because you want to make money, and the only ones who have to make money are men, because they have to financially provide for a family, either to child support or on an individual level.
But all these things that you're saying are technically like social constructs, right? Like there are families where the women
No,
supports.
it's biology. It's
Well,
always been the
you
man
can't-
who provides.
Yeah.
Like, it's evolutionary. The man. All right. Let me say. The woman was always the one who got pregnant for 9 months, and then she had to care for the child. The woman never had the opportunity to hunt or leave their children
For
alone.
sure.
It was
No.
always the man who had to hunt and
Yeah.
make resources. That's the biological role. You can't change that with a social construct. Even now, it's always the man who is financially responsible for the family, because he is the one who has that biological role. You can't change that.
I mean, saying that because men did the hunting in hunter-gatherer days, that means that men need to make all the money now doesn't follow. Like, this is a completely different situation where back then it was the case because men were bigger and stronger and they were the ones that could actually do the hunting. Nowadays, our society doesn't need that. Like, there's nothing about programming that
It's not just
a man can do that a woman
it's not
can't.
just body strength, it's also mental strength. If you have the capacity to run away from animals and hunt animals and kill them, you definitely can do some stuff that women can't.
Like,
It's always-
type on a
it's also
keyboard for
mental-
extended periods of time?
No, I mean like working on a construction work site, or working 10 hours on a very hard code game or something, programming stuff. That's stuff that, or like flying a plane for 10 hours. That's
But
all
you-
stuff that is high mental capability.
You still haven't, I don't think you've done a good job of telling me, though, that even if these things are true on, the whole for the majority of people, why we would deny the minority of women who can pass all these bars and who can do these things. Why we would deny them their
Because at the
opportunity.
end they will get pregnant and they'll text my daughter with
You can't just say no. You can't just say all women will get pregnant. Even if they do get pregnant, like I said, plenty of women get pregnant, take their pregnancy leave, and then come back to work as soon as they can. Especially if we put women in situations. Yes, I work with people that do this. Especially if we put women in situations where they can
Your
afford
social
daycare and
circle
stuff.
isn't collective evidence.
I know, but
You
you're.
can't use a social circle.
Yeah, I know, but I can. Yes, you're right. But at the same time, you're just asserting these things. You're just asserting them without any sort of backing, other than just saying it's
From a
biology.
utilitarian perspective, if 51% of women didn't go to work after having children, it would be morally justified to take the right to go in these working fields just away.
No, not even from a
The majority of
utilitarian
women don't.
perspective.
Of course, if most women don't go back after being pregnant, it would be okay to take away the right from all women, because society benefits from it.
No, not necessarily, because just because the majority of women don't do a thing doesn't mean that there couldn't be one woman whose work on her own would be a net benefit, if that makes sense. I don't know. I just generally think that people should have the freedom to do what they want,
It
and as
kinda
long as
depends
they
on the job. I mean,
Yeah, but again,
in the military,
so-
no, but in
the
let's say a
military.
woman wants to become, let's say a woman wants to become a teacher, right?
Yes,
Crazy
crazy
idea,
idea, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be fine from my perspective, but stuff like police or military that has effect on other citizens, and if they're too weak to do the job, there are problems, and
Honestly, I think we should ban
I-
men from the police. Because it's a stressful job, and men are too quick to anger. They're too quick to let their emotions get the better of them, and they're too quick to violence and pull their guns out. So since on the whole men are more likely to be violent, I think we should we should ban all men from being police.
what's the evidence behind?
Biology.
No.
I'm taking your argument and just moving it back on you, dude. You just keep saying it's biology because the majority of women choose something, and that means it's biology, which means that we shouldn't let the rest of them because reasons yeah. Jeff from the chat has the best idea. Everyone should be banned from being police.
What I mean with jobs like police or military service are jobs where it's about the safety of all people. You
Yeah.
don't want an incompetent firefighter. You don't want
Mhm.
incompetent police to save you. They won't be able to do the job. What I'm saying is that women usually, because of biology, don't tend to go in those risky situations
For sure.
where they can be killed or there's violence. Yeah,
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that there aren't individuals that do it. There's a lot of female police officers, and especially with the advent of things like firearms that really, really even the playing field so that size and physical strength doesn't matter nearly as much, it makes them just as effective at the job as their male counterparts are.
If for some strange reason a woman had the exact height and strength and competence and mental ability as a man, maybe, yeah.
But I mean, they don't even need like the same height or strength to be something like a police officer, right? Especially, or just in the military in general.
Not, but it should be.
I mean,
there should be those
not
requirements. The police and the firefighters are there to do a job, to protect you from others and protect you from fire.
But that's why we have firearms.
Some school sport. It's not some tennis game or something where everyone can be great at anything. No, we need some requirements for those stuff too.
But we have those.
You can't let anyone in.
It's not just anarchy,
Not really.
dude. We have
the
those.
requirements have been lowered for women. Like.
Maybe. And maybe we should look into that.
Do you know why there always has to be a male police officer with a female police officer? Woman, two female
Is that
police
true?
officers. Never. Yes.
In the United States or Germany?
Germany. Two female police officers aren't allowed to go by their own. There always has to be a man.
No, I don't know.
Even the police realizes that two women can't be left alone to do a police job. There always has to be a man. And it's most.
But like, you didn't give me a reason. You just asked me why, and then you just said because we know that women can't do it. Like, that's a very circular argument.
Like you're talking about like 0.1% of the female population who somehow have the same height, strength, and competence as their.
We don't take things like height or strength necessarily into account for things like a police officer. For a soldier or a firefighter,
to do the job of
no, you don't. Not a police officer. For a soldier or a firefighter, yeah, I could probably get on board with. They probably need to be at least a certain strength. I don't know about height, but they probably need to be strong enough to like carry a full like a grown man like out of a building, right? I can probably get on board with that. But for a police officer, no. Like, especially if we do have that rule where like they have to be paired with a man, which seems weird to me. But like, if all you're doing is routine traffic stops, you don't need to be a certain height or like a certain strength.
Well, some police officers have to tackle down other people who want to escape. They have to use handcuffs. They have to maybe shoot. Like, do you?
I've seen plenty of.
I've
seen plenty of videos of women doing that.
Of women tackling down an adult male to the ground on their own.
The fact that a woman might not be able to apprehend a suspect in a particular situation that a man might be able to does not mean that she is completely incapable of performing the daily tasks of a police officer.
That's enough justification to prevent her from doing the job.
I mean, but what if she can, though? Like, what if she does?
If she has the same height and strength and mental capability and...
Why does height matter, though? I'm confused. There's a lot of short male police officers.
There is a high correlation between height and strength.
Yeah, true, but there's a lot of short male police officers still.
Yeah, what do you mean with short?
You're just saying that there needs to be a height requirement, and that doesn't seem to be something that's specifically towards women. There's a lot of short male police officers.
It depends on what you mean with short.
You just keep saying height requirements, so I'm saying, like, if you set a height requirement and a male doesn't meet that height requirement, but they meet all other criteria, would you not allow that male in?
If the male doesn't meet the height requirement, he can't join.
What's the height? Like, I'm 6'3", so I say anyone under 6 feet should just be sent to a gulag, but that's just my opinion.
So in Germany, the height requirement is like 5'9".
5'9"? All right, that's. I would have a hard time believing a 5'7" man can't do the same thing a 5'9" man can, but that's kind of like a recursive thing that you'll get yourself into. How tall are you? Just curious.
In sports, if you look at basketball, there's a very clear difference between short and tall men, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that short men have never been successful in basketball. Muggsy Bogues, JJ Barea.
Strong correlation between competence in basketball and height.
Competence isn't the word I would use, but yes, elite athleticism. Yeah, height. Well, because in a sport like basketball, you necessarily, not really necessarily, height is a very big advantage. But that doesn't mean that short people can't do it. It just means it's an advantage. How tall are you, if you don't mind me asking? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to.
I'm 5'11".
All right, cool. So, sorry, I would send you to the gulag. You're not 6 foot.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's been fun, but I haven't eaten anything all day, and it's coming to 6 o'clock here in Texas. You know, like I we obviously disagree with a lot of stuff, but this was a pretty chill chat. Like, I don't know, at the very least, you seem to be sincere with your beliefs, and you're not like, I don't think that you're arguing anything in bad faith. I don't think that you're like trying to push some ideas secretly. I think you're very out front with these ideas, and I would rather talk to somebody who's very out front with their ideas and not arguing in bad faith than somebody who I would agree with more but is arguing in bad faith. So yeah, I appreciate you talking though, man. It's been real interesting.
Yeah, thank you.